Audiobook by Fate's Reader. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel for more epic series. Drop your recommended novel below. We love to know what you want to hear next. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 361. Testing the Cannon. When Qin Mu came to the smithy, he saw xianxia with an apron. This was to prevent sparks from burning his clothes. However, his originally bright robe had long become similar to a rag cloth. He was forging a hairpin and had hammered the black gold 1,000 times. He hammered it into the thinnest gold paper before folding it to finally forge the shape of the hairpin. An accessory forged with this method would have the finest vein lines and be what the upper-class women loved the most. As a matter of fact, xianxia had made himself quite a reputation in the blacksmith circle of the capital. There were quite a number of divine arts practitioners of Six Directions realm who had come to find him to forge spirit weapons. There were also quite a number of nobles who wanted strange weapons like hairpins and bracelets. Divine arts practitioners of Six Directions realm required a forging expert to forge the spirit weapon they had given birth to in their divine treasure. Thus, the ability of the forging master was very important. Xianxia was very clever and could forge all kinds of spirit weapons well. His technique and divine arts had myriad changes, and he could forge spirit weapons which were compatible with the divine arts practitioners. Human Emperor Qin, take a seat in the shop first. I'll come over once I'm done with the hairpin. Xianxia saw him coming and shouted into the shop. Yanzi, Human Emperor is here. Help me attend to him first. Qin Mu walked into the ship and smiled. It's fine just calling me Cult Master. When you call me Human Emperor, it just keeps reminding me that you and I are enemies. Jingyan wore the clothes of a village girl, having replaced the gorgeous and elegant clothes she had come with from high heavens. She carried a pot of tea and invited Qin Mu to take a seat. The tea was plain. When xianxia and Qin Mu had met for the first time, he had served him with the best tea in high heavens, and it had been the best tea Qin Mu had drunk. It was called Green Destiny. Yet what he was served at that moment was the most ordinary tea. There's no more good tea. Cult Master Qin, please forgive us. Jingyan blushed with shame and poured the tea for him. We have finished Green Destiny tea last month, she said in a low voice. Qin Mu took a sip and said, I'm also used to plain tea. How did you buy this shop? Young Master had originally bought a house in the capital, so we sold it to buy this shop. Jingyan then added, Sister Yulu couldn't get used to this kind of hardship, so she found an excuse to leave and return to high heavens. Only I'm left to stay with young master. Qin Mu invited her to take a seat as well. He smiled and said, You're a good maiden. Xianxia lifted the curtain and walked in with a towel in his hands, having just washed his hands. He hung the towel behind the curtain and came to the table to sit down, pouring a cup of tea for himself. He drank it in one gulp and poured another cup for himself. Jingyan wanted to stand up, but xianxia waved his hand and said, There are no rules here. You are the mistress of our smithy, so just take a seat. Jingyan could only remain seated after such words. Qin Mu's gaze flickered and he smiled. Brother Su, how's your daily life? Xianxia sighed and shook his head. It's not too good, but it's very fulfilling. I never knew it was so hard to earn money, since I had never had to worry about money in high heavens. But now, I actually know how great is the worth of a great abundance coin. Brother Qin, you paid a great abundance coin for 10 bowls of noodles. Truly a waste. It's more than enough to buy 100 bowls of noodles. Qin Mu looked at him blankly and said, I'm also not sure about how much a great abundance coin is worth. I rarely lacked money, so I usually pay with a great abundance coin when I go out to eat. You have never been poor before. Xianxia drank a few more cups of tea and let out a shaky breath. He said, The money I've earned during these days is still not enough. Give me some more time. I should be able to pay you in about 2 years' time. Qin Mu smiled and said, It's small money, so I'm not in a hurry. Linger will keep it in mind better than me. I'm here to invite you to observe the ceremony. Sunshot Divine Cannon is already done. Xianxia was stunned for a moment, then sighed. You used 2 months to design and build a divine cannon, yet I could only forge spirit weapons in this smithy. 15 days ago, I had felt you starting the furnace twice. You should have been testing the cannon's frame, right? That's right. Qin Mu drank the tea in his cup in one gulp and said, I used the power of the entire empire to forge that sunshot divine cannon and didn't charge for it as I had no lack of money. If I charged, even the emperor wouldn't have been able to pay me. Let's go and take a look. Su Xianxia stood up and removed the apron. He said to Jing Yan, follow me as well. Jing Yan agreed, and the three of them walked out of the smithy and headed for the outskirts. When they reached their goal, they saw a large spirit weapon that covered an area of 66 hectares. The eyeball in the center of the huge cannon battery had been forged and floated between the light-gathering forks. Hundreds of divine arts practitioners were on the cannon battery measuring something busily. The three of them walked to the front. Su Xianxia and Jing Yan were full of astonishment as they raised their heads to look at the humongous object. It was very hard to imagine how Qin Mu had only used 2 months and more to forge that kind of terrifying spirit weapon. Of course, it wasn't the work of Qin Mu alone. Instead, it was the fruit of all the algebra experts and forging masters of all Eternal Peace Empire putting their wisdom together. Even if among them, Qin Mu's contribution was the greatest. If it wasn't for his design and him improving the craft of forging, it would have been impossible for the forging standard of Eternal Peace Empire to create such a heaven-defying treasure. Qin Mu had pushed the Eternal Peace Empire's craft of forging forward by 100 years. The emperor and the civil and military officials had all arrived. There were also high officials and nobles from the capital, as well as the commoners gathered around to look at the sunshot divine cannon starting up. Even village chief, Hermit Qin Mu, and the rest of the people hurried over to see the divine cannon fire. Pill furnace inspection normal. No cracks found. An official from Ministry of Works shouted out loudly. Formation markings inspection normal. No break in connection found. Runes inspection normal. Cannon's frame inspection normal. Light gathering forks inspection normal. Divine eye inspection normal. Voices rang one after another, and Shan Yoshin looked at Qin Mu, who kept nodding his head. Shan Yoshin said loudly, Number 1 pill furnace ignited, strength test, maximum firepower. After a moment, an apothecary beside the pill furnace shouted, Number 1 pill furnace at maximum firepower, results are normal. Number 2 pill furnace ignite for test. Number 2 pill furnace at maximum firepower, results are normal. Su Xianxia looked at this kind of test method and was instantly stunned. He muttered, Cult Master Qin, when will I ever reach your standard in the craft of forging? My smithy is simply too shabby. Qin Mu swiftly consoled him. Don't worry, everyone comes to the top step by step. I also had my bad days. Really? Su Xianxia asked suspiciously. Qin Mu thought and shook his head. No, not long after I left the village, I had already become renowned in the world. Su Xianxia was silent for a moment, then said, Cult Master Qin, you will be beaten to death sooner or later if you keep consoling people like this. However, when I was at the village, I picked up the iron hammer when I was 5 and I learned painting from Grandpa Def. Qin Mu had an indifferent expression. You only picked up the iron hammer and do not know how much hard work I put in it over the 10 years. Su Xianxia nodded and said, Overlord body is not something that can achieve success without hard work. I've benefited from your advice. Finally, the 56 furnaces were at maximum firepower. Instantly, all the runes on the base of Sunshot Divine Cannon lit up, and all of the formations were activated. The huge cannon battery gradually rose into the sky, and waves of terrifying power bloomed, shaking the space around continuously. The energy in 56 pill furnaces flooded frantically toward the light-gathering forks, and through them they transformed into 4 thick beams that tunneled into the center of the huge divine eye. Sounds of gears rotating came from the inside of the divine eye, their speed becoming faster and faster. Suddenly, the sound vanished, and the 240 yards divine eye seemed to turn into void. All kinds of formations in it were activated one after another, and the black gold, black iron, divine gold, and other divine materials used to form it all vanished. They were all replaced by a divine eye bathed in divine light. The eye was closed, Grrrk. The huge eye rotated on top of the cannon battery, and the sound of wind that it brought with it was scary. But the throbbing from the eye was even more terrifying. Even the strong practitioners of the cult master level felt fear in their hearts. Cult Master Qin. Shan Yoshin bowed toward Qin Mu while standing on the cannon battery. The preparations for Sunshot Divine Cannon are done. Qin Mu rose and said to Emperor Yanfeng, "Your Majesty, please." Emperor Yanfeng took in a deep breath and led all the civil and military officials to fly up onto the cannon battery. He said solemnly, "Supervisor Qin, you have been busy for the past 2 months, so you should be the one to fire this shot." Qin Mu acknowledged his words, and Shan Yoshin brought over a jade plate. Qin Mu executed his vital qi, and the jade plate burst forth with dazzling lights. The rays shone and transformed into a light screen that was 3 feet wide. It showed the sight of the surroundings. Qin Mu gently touched the screen shown by the jade plate, and the divine eye of Sunshot Divine Cannon rotated with this move. Qin Mu adjusted the direction of the divine eye to aim at the sky. He tapped on the jade plate, and the eye opened suddenly, ripping the world above apart. The sky trembled violently as a tear was opened up. Everyone instantly saw a black mark spread above, which tore the sky open. In the meantime, the beam of light vanished without a trace. After a moment, a rumbling came from beyond the sky. It sounded like 10,000 thunders booming at once. A huge tear appeared in the sky, a void within it. Sometime later, it started to slowly heal. Su Shenghua's heart became heavier and heavier. No one in high heavens could be able to hold against such a cannon. Even if it was his master Jade Sovereign or the other 3 sovereigns, none of them would be able to survive the attack from Sunshot Divine Cannon. This kind of weapon was no longer a weapon of the mortal world. It was a weapon to slaughter gods. "My money is not wasted." Emperor Yanfeng looked at the sky that was slowly healing and muttered, "Imperial Preceptor, it's a pity you are not here to see this sight." In the prairie, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was bringing the army back to eternal peace when he suddenly raised his head to see a tear in the sky. His heart trembled violently. "Cult Master Qin, you have finally completed the weapon to slaughter gods." On the cannon battery, Qin Mu dispersed his vital qi, and the light screen from the jade plate vanished. The pill furnaces were also extinguished one by one, which caused the formations to stop operating. The huge Sunshot Divine Cannon gradually descended from the sky. Qin Mu raised his head to look above and muttered to himself, "Since it's called Sunshot Divine Cannon, should I shoot at the sun once?" Everyone around him shuddered, and Emperor Yanfeng hurriedly snatched the jade plate from his hands while shouting, "Supervisor Qin, if the sun was destroyed by your shot, how would the people survive? Your idea is too dangerous. Off with your head." A contrarian among the civil and military officials immediately said, "Your Majesty, a ruler doesn't go back on his words." Emperor Yanfeng turned his head to look at him before waving a hand and saying, "I will certainly go back on my words, but since you can't see the need for it, why should I keep you? Retire and return home." "Dear Minister Qin, how do I use this jade plate?" Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 362, Thickness of the Sky. Activating Sunshot Divine Cannon required the jade plate in Qin Mu's hand. Since the battery was too large, it wasn't easy to control, so Qin Mu had created a tool to interact with it. The jade plate could then have the huge divine cannon shoot wherever he pointed. It was the central control of Sunshot Divine Cannon. Qin Mu taught Emperor Yanfeng how to use the jade plate, which was simple to learn and use. As a great master in forging, Qin Mu could simplify the most complicated things, and with just this point, he surpassed other great masters of forging by leaps and bounds. Emperor Yanfeng put away the circular plate. After a while, he took it out to play with it before putting it back again. Some time later, he took it out once more to fiddle with it again. Qin Mu said kindly, "Your Majesty can try firing one shot." Emperor Yanfeng looked at him, then said unpleasantly, "One shot and the treasury will be emptied. I'm not like you, spending money like flowing water. Hasn't the crown prince come back from the snow plains? He should have brought back quite a lot of treasure," Qin Mu said. "But I also can't shoot randomly. The money in the imperial treasury can't be touched carelessly. There are many things to be done in the empire, and which of them don't need money? Emperor Yanfeng put away the jade plate, but after a moment, Qin Mu saw him taking it out again sneakily. He couldn't help shaking his head. If Emperor Yanfeng never fired a shot, he would definitely be unable to have a pleasant sleep. He would just keep thinking of doing it. However, his rationality would tell him that he couldn't misuse Sunshot Divine Cannon, so he would end up at a loss. Let him be, Qin Mu thought to himself. Suddenly, a couple officials from the Department of Sky Supervision carried over some thick scrolls. In their lead was Hua Shanling, who greeted Qin Mu and said, "Supervisor Qin, we at the Sky Supervision platform have noticed some peculiarity when you shot at the sky earlier. Supervisor has many algebra experts here, so I would like to invite Supervisor to help us calculate it." "What peculiarity?" Qin Mu asked with bewilderment. When the sky was torn, there was a change in the astronomical phenomenon. Hua Jingling of Department of Sky Supervision, who was at the side, then added, "The sky split open and the astronomical phenomenon in the sky shifted, returning back to normal only after the tear was healed. We recorded the shift in angles, but since our attainments in algebra aren't high, it's hard for us to calculate what happened. Lord Qin, please take a look. These are the previous star charts." He flipped open the star charts and went through them page by page. Qin Mu observed that the celestial bodies that Department of Sky Supervision had recorded each year had a regular pattern. Their changes were very minute. "This is the star chart after Lord Qin fired that cannon." Hua Jingling flipped to the last page and pointed at the star chart. After that cannon, the sky turned dark for an instant, and the armillary sphere recorded the celestial bodies in the sky. The sun had shifted 1.75 inches at the time, but when the tear recovered, the sun moved back. During the darkness, the other stars had also shifted. Meanwhile, at the location of the tear, there had been no stars at all. This is definitely not normal. In the tear, there should have been 107 stars. Qin Mu was still puzzled. Would it be because the power of the divine cannon was too strong, causing distortion in vision which resulted in what looked like the shifting of celestial bodies? "There's this possibility," Hua Jingling said. "However, Department of Sky Supervision uses an armillary sphere, which is a spirit weapon as well as a heavy spirit treasure. Our vision can be distorted, but the armillary sphere couldn't be tricked like that. The star chart on the armillary sphere moves together with the celestial bodies in the sky. If the star chart on the armillary sphere moved, it means that the stars in the sky had really moved. But the most crucial thing is, why were there no stars at the location of the tear?" Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly, and he probed, "What you mean is?" The people looked at one another, and Hua Shanling coughed lightly. "Before doing any calculations, we at the Department of Sky Supervision don't dare to make any guesses and can't be responsible for anyone else's guesses. Please forgive us, Lord Qin. These fellows are mysterious." Qin Mu frowned and said, "The experts with me are mostly algebra experts of Dao Sect and Little Jade Capital. They are currently planning to leave and return to Dao Sect and Little Jade Capital. I don't dare to say if I can ask them to stay." Su Xianxia walked up and said with excitement, "I also have some attainments in algebra." Qin Mu smiled and said, "It's naturally good for Brother Su to come and help. I will go invite Dao Master Lin Xian and Wang Miran." Jin Yan immediately said, "Since my young master is helping, the 1,000 coins that we owed. Even if you don't help, I have no lack of algebra experts here." Qin Mu replied without even turning his head. Jing Yan's expression instantly turned black. "Miser! Yanzi, don't be angry. Actually, I would also like to know what had happened to the sky after Cult Master Qin fired off that shot. What he said isn't wrong as well. With or without our help, it changes nothing for him. It's just a matter of time," Su Xianxia said. Qin Mu found Dao Master Lin Xian, Mu Qingdai, and the rest of the young experts. After gathering everyone, Wang Miran asked, "What is Cult Master calculating this time?" Qin Mu looked at Hua Jingling of Department of Sky Supervision, whose gaze was sparkling as he said, "An astronomical phenomenon." Dao Master Lin Xian smiled and said, "Astronomical phenomenon? Cult Master Qin had cultivated our Dao Sect's Dao Sword, and the fourth writing of Dao Sword is nothing else but an astronomical phenomenon. With him around, what use are we? Qin Mu shook his head and said, the fourth writing of Dao Sword calculates a normal astronomical phenomenon. What Department of Sky Supervision wants us to calculate is an abnormal one. Dao Master Lin Xian and the other Taoists became bewildered. There was a difference between a normal and an abnormal astronomical phenomenon. Hu Jingling explained the astronomical phenomenon his department had observed and said, the stars moving and the stars in the tier disappearing, this kind of astronomical phenomenon is definitely not normal. It's like the stars are hanging on a piece of curtain. Mu Qingdai blurted out. Hu Jingling clapped his hands and said, that's right. It's like they are all hanging on a piece of curtain. Lord Qin used the beam to tear apart this curtain. So the sun, moon and the stars split to both sides. All of the young people looked at one another with grim expressions. The astronomical phenomenon was hung in the sky. Su Xianxia raised his head to look at the sky while composing himself. He asked, Cult Master Qin, what do you want us to calculate? According to the shift in stars caused by that beam, we will have to calculate the height and thickness of the sky. Qin Mu looked at the officials and asked, is that your intention? The officials of Department of Sky Supervision looked at each other and nodded. Lord Qin is wise, Hu Jingling said in a hoarse voice. In the past, we felt that the sky is boundless, and the thickness of the sky is also boundless. However, that beam from Lord Qin made us realize that there might be a limit to the height of the sky, and its thickness as well. The stars in the sky may not be as far away as we thought, and the sun seemed to also be. He didn't dare to continue saying. Qin Mu looked at everyone and said, what does everyone feel? They were all young people, so even though their origins were different, their inheritances were different, and even their factions and philosophies were different, they were all very curious. Every one of them looked up at the sky. Dao Master Lin Xian retracted his gaze and said, since Cult Master Qin's beam showed us that the sky has a height and thickness, why can't we calculate it? Everyone nodded in acknowledgement. We need to know the dates of the stars shifting in order to be able to calculate, Wang Miran said. My Department of Sky Supervision has recorded all the stars, including the sun, Hu Jingling said right away. This makes it much easier. Everyone immediately sprung to action, and after a long time they calculated the numbers. When they looked at them, their faces became grim and dazed. I won't believe it. A Taoist from Dao sect suddenly got up and smashed his 8 trigrams on the ground, breaking them to pieces. He then again shouted out angrily, I won't believe it. When he was done, he left. The other algebra experts were silent. Long Yu muttered, this is impossible. We must have calculated wrongly. This is absolutely impossible. The minds of the Dao sect's experts had already crumbled, and they chuckled. We must have calculated wrongly. The sky cannot be so thin. It's definitely wrong. Hu Jingling said firmly. That's right, it's definitely wrong. Many others chimed in. Su Xianxia shook his head and said, it cannot be that so many of us had calculated wrongly, right? Everyone's numbers are the same, so the result is correct. The sky is this high and this thick. It's impossible. Impossible. Long Yu stumbled away in a daze. He was slightly crazy. Mu Qingdai was giddy. She squatted down on the ground, then sat down. Qin Mu looked at the numbers they had calculated and sunk into deep thought. The sky was 10,000 miles high, yet the thickness was only a pathetic 1,000 yards. This meant that in that thickness of 1,000 yards, there was a sun, a moon, a galaxy, and countless other stars. How was this possible? His mind had also slightly crumbled as he chuckled nonstop. He laughed till tears were almost pouring from his eyes as he sat down and slapped his knee repeatedly. Cult Master Qin, what are you laughing about? Dao Master Lin Xian shouted out while staring at him angrily. Abandoned people. Qin Mu laughed loudly and pointed at his nose, almost crying from laughter. You are an abandoned person. You are also an abandoned person. And you are all abandoned people. Everyone looked at him coldly as his finger pointed at every single one of them. When he finally pointed at Su Xianxia, his laughter quelled and his face became terrifyingly cold. You are also an abandoned person. Su Xianxia frowned. The sky was only this high and this thick. Not to say a sun, a moon, and many stars, not even a mountain could be put there. Yet there was a sun, a moon, and the galaxy above, so there was only one possibility. The resplendent stars, the blazing sun, the bright moon, and the galaxy that was filled with millions and millions of stars like a long river were all fake. They were all painted there. The sky was like a seal that sealed their world, showing them the sun, moon, stars, constellations, and the galaxy that were all fake. In great ruins, there was God-broken mountain range, all around which no sun could be seen. When it came to nighttime, the darkness invaded, so the stars and moon could never be seen either. The people of great ruins were the people abandoned by gods. However, the life forms in the whole world were the same as the abandoned people of great ruins. They were all abandoned people. Taoist Lin Xian suddenly shook his sleeves and said coldly, I'm not an abandoned person. Disciples of Tao sect, let's go, return to the mountain. As he walked, tears suddenly filled his face. Tao follows the nature, follows the King fake nature. The young Tao master strained his throat as he bellowed at the sky. All my effort in cultivating was used on King fake nature. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 363, Heaven Alliance. Measuring out the height and thickness of the sky may have dealt a severe blow to Qin Mu and the rest, but Tao Master Lin Xian had suffered the greatest blow. Tao sect's teachings, techniques, and divine arts were all built on the foundation of Tao follows the nature. To search for the essence of all living things through nature was the origin of their techniques, divine arts, and even frame of mind. And then Tao Master Lin Xian discovered that the astronomical phenomenon of nature was fake. With that kind of situation, it was no wonder his frame of mind would collapse. What kind of great Tao could be comprehended by comprehending a fake nature? The legs of Tao Master Lin Xian, who was walking forward by himself, suddenly went soft and he knelt onto the ground with a thump. His expression was stupefied, and his eyes were blank. A few Taoists immediately went forward to help him up, only to hear their Tao master mutter. The 14th writing of Tao Sword had never been cultivated before, and Master used his whole life to comprehend it. Only then was his talent and learning enough, but he still couldn't succeed in cultivating it. Turns out it was not that he couldn't do it, it was because all the nature is fake. How could he succeed in cultivating it if the nature he comprehended was fake? Cough, cough. He coughed violently and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He was devastated. Tao follows the nature was the teaching of Tao sect, yet the nature was fake. The impact he received from learning this could be imagined. Qin Mu looked at Su Xianxia and asked, Is the sky in your high heavens the same as the sky? Su Xianxia raised his head to look at the sky before nodding. The same sky, the same stars, high heavens was no exception. Qin Mu saying that he was an abandoned person wasn't false at all. The sky was a cage, and no matter if it was high heavens or great ruins, they were all birds that didn't know they were in a cage. Qin Mu composed his heart and walked to Tao Master Lin Xian's side to help him up. He said in a low voice, The truth is cold and hard to accept, so it's best to not make it public. Chase after the few Taoists that had run away and don't let them talk nonsense. You need to protect some of their hope. Tao Master Lin Xian looked at him, straight in the eyes, with a weird expression. He asked in a hoarse voice, Do you think people will believe what they say? Qin Mu smiled and said, People will believe you. You are asking me not to say? Tao Master Lin Xian filled with scorn, and he chuckled. Our previous Tao Masters and countless other Taoists had all wanted to solve the 14th writing of Tao Sword. They spent immeasurable effort comprehending the nature of heaven and earth, yet the 14th writing of Tao sect seemed to be an insurmountable peak, an impossible to solve conjecture. But in the end, it all comes to the astronomical phenomenon being wrong. Hehe. How mocking, truly King mocking. Even though he was the Tao master of Tao sect, a sacred ground, he was still a youth in his nature, so he couldn't help spitting out a few vulgarities. The previous Tao masters of Tao sect didn't know where the mistake was, so they couldn't succeed in cultivating the 14th sword. But now you know. Maybe Dao Master Lin Xian can be the first person to succeed in cultivating the 14th sword, Qin Mu said meaningfully. Dao Master Lin Xian's heart trembled slightly, and he turned to look at him. Crisis. Danger lies together with opportunity. The situation now is a danger and an opportunity at the same time. Qin Mu smiled and added, ordinary people can only see the danger, but wise people can see the opportunity that lies with the danger. However, only those with the abilities can be able to grasp this opportunity. Which kind of person is Dao Master? Dao Master Lin Xian's chest heaved up and down. He'd seen that the sky was fake and the astronomical phenomenon was also fake earlier. That had halted the progress of Dao Sect's path, skills, and divine arts, causing everyone to not be able to comprehend the final marvel of Dao Sword. However, Qin Mu's words made him see the opportunity. Since he knew what was fake, he should go and see the real thing. In that case, there would be a possibility of cultivating the 14th writing of Dao Sword. I accept wholeheartedly you being the human emperor. Dao Master composed himself and said, I feel that the debate between the teachings of Dao Sect and Heavenly Devil Cult can finally be put to a rest. Qin Mu nodded. I was thinking the same thing. I think we can form an alliance, and when our abilities grow enough, we will be able to pierce through this sky. Wang Muran walked over and stretched out his palm while saying, Wang Muran of Little Jade Capital is willing to form an alliance with Human Emperor and Dao Sect. Qin Mu and Taoist Lin Xian stretched out their palms as well. Qin Mu turned around to look at Su Xianxia, who walked over and stretched out his palm as well. Su Xianxia of High Heavens is willing to form an alliance with Human Emperor, Dao Sect, and Little Jade Capital. Now, shouldn't our alliance have a name? Wang Muran smiled and said, Why don't we call it Heaven Alliance? The three of them said in unison, Great! Heaven Alliance it shall be. The four of them pulled back their palms, and Dao Master Lin Xian nodded to everyone before bringing all the experts of Dao Sect to leave. Lord Qin, should we tell this to the Emperor? Shanliang went forward to ask with a low voice. Of course, the Emperor has to know, Qin Mu said. However, only tell the Emperor. Don't spread it to others. Be careful of your head falling off. Shanliang immediately nodded and called the other officials of Department of Sky Supervision before hurrying away. Wang Muran let out a shaky breath and said, Human Emperor, please forgive me. I will have to tell this to Senior Uncle Qin Yu. Qin Mu nodded and said, Immortal Qin Yu knows what to say and what not to say. Feel free to tell him. Senior Sister, find Senior Brother Long Yu. I shall go find Senior Uncle, Wang Muran said to Mu Qingdai. The two of them then immediately split ways. Now only Qin Mu, Su Xianxia, and Jing Yan were left. Qin Mu glanced at Su Xianxia and said, Brother Su seemed to not be astonished in the least. Even Dao Master couldn't help his surprise, and his face lost color once his mind was shaken to the core. Yet Brother Su still looked as usual. I'm really impressed. Even I had lost my composure just now, so my cultivation of frame of mind is still slightly inferior to that of Brother Su. Su Xianghua's expression remained the same when he said, I'm astonished and I'm still in shock. I had originally thought high heavens was high above, far from the mortal world. Never did I expect us to be in the same cage as well. The blow of that is extreme. Qin Mu examined him, but couldn't see any expression of shock. He asked suspiciously, Really? Cult Master Qin, my young master looks like this when he is shocked. He at most reveals a slight frown, Jing Yan said in a low voice. Qin Mu frowned. And when he's not astonished? He's also like this. Qin Mu was flabbergasted. Su Xianxia raised his head to look at the sky and suddenly said, Brother Qin, what do you think is beyond the sky? I don't know. Qin Mu chose to walk back to the capital and said, When we have the ability, we will take a look. Su Xianxia followed him, and the three of them entered the city. Su Xianxia and Jing Yan returned to their smithy, while Qin Mu went to Imperial College. Numerous algebra experts in Imperial College had already confirmed the space algebra model of the Golden Book. Dao Sect had made a copy and the palace also had a copy. Hermit Qin Mu had also made a copy while another copy was left in Imperial College. Of course, Heavenly Devil Cult also got a copy. Establishing the Golden Book meant that the experts of cult master level who were stuck on Divine Bridge Realm had the possibility for a breakthrough. This would result in a huge batch of gods. Of course, not everyone would be able to connect the Divine Bridge. In order to cultivate the techniques in the Golden Book, one needed to have very high attainments in algebra. If their attainments weren't high, they still wouldn't be able to patch the Divine Bridge even if they had received the techniques and space algebra model of the Golden Book. Qin Mu returned to his residence and saw Hermit Qin Yu, village chief, and the rest with grim faces. Wang Muran was at the side, so it was obvious that he had already told them about what Qin Mu and the others had found out. "I've thought of a person." Village chief raised his head to look at the sky and suddenly said in a daze, "Maybe he would know some details." "Dao friend Qin Yu, do you know who I'm talking about?" "I know, the person who raised his knives at heaven." Hermit Qin Yu's gaze flickered. "Heaven knife?" Qin Mu was slightly stunned. "Grandpa Butcher?" Rumors say that Heaven Knife raised his knives at heaven, and many people had seen that scene. His knife sliced open the sky and gods appeared. He fought with the gods until his corpse fell back into the mortal world. He was known as the craziest martial maniac, and if it wasn't for that battle, Heaven Knife wouldn't have vanished without a trace. Hermit Qin Yu then added, "If Heaven Knife didn't leave back then, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor wouldn't have been able to use his sword skill school to defeat Battle Technique School. He wouldn't have been known as Sword God. The god that had fought with Heaven Knife wasn't from high heavens, but had actually come from outer space. I didn't think of it before, but now that I do, Heaven Knife should know many things. Some time ago, Heaven Knife and Spear God came to my little jade capital as guests, but they left immediately after they sensed the auras of the gods from high heavens. It's a pity we have no idea where they went after." Village chief pondered it over and said, "That maniac must have gone to find the fake gods of high heavens. Ever since his waist was reattached, he has always been in a half-crazed state. If Blind wasn't with him, who knows what trouble he would have caused. He knows many secrets, so we shall go and find him. Muir, let's go and find Butcher." Qin Mu hesitated for a moment. "Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor still owes me 100 treasures, and he is returning to the capital soon." Village chief shook his head. "The treasures in Roland's Golden Palace are worthy to look at? Grandmaster of Roland's Golden Palace is none other than a rag and bone man. Cripple wouldn't even look at the treasures that Guy had collected in his past lifetimes." Qin Mu hesitated for a moment, then called Hu Linger over and instructed her, "Linger, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor owes me 100 treasures, so after he returns to the capital, help me collect them." Hu Linger's eyes instantly shone, and she smiled. "Young master, what treasures?" "He will bring treasures back from Roland's Golden Palace, and we can choose any 100 of them," Qin Mu said. Hu Linger was overjoyed, but she hesitated and said, "Young master, my judgment isn't as good as yours. I'm afraid I won't be able to choose the good ones. I shall teach you 9 Heaven's Eyes awakening skill, so you can awaken your eyes and see what treasures are worth it." Qin Mu taught 9 Heaven's Eyes awakening skill to Hu Linger before waking the dragon Qilin. He placed Village Chief on its back and said, "Village Chief, how can we find Grandpa Butcher?" "Very simple, I'll just have to let out my aura and I will be able to alarm the visitors from high heavens. I can also alarm Butcher and Blind as well. In this way, they will know about us. The visitors from high heavens will definitely release their auras to challenge me. After we go over, we will be able to see Butcher and Blind," Village Chief said indifferently. He then added softly, "It's time to settle our deals with the visitors of high heavens." He was about to release his aura when he suddenly revealed an astonished expression. Hermit Qin Yu and the rest of the strong practitioners of Little Jade Capital also looked over in the same direction with shock. Qin Mu was about to ask when he also felt terrifying pulses emanating over. "It's those fellows from high heavens. Weird. I haven't even let out my aura and they already revealed their location. Not right. They have started fighting," Village Chief muttered. He then cried out, The 4 sovereigns of high heavens are massacring each other. Mu'er, I shall go ahead first. Boom! A huge bang came from the rocking chair, and village chief disappeared from the dragon Qilin's back. A few more tremors swept over as Qin Mu, Yu He, and Yu Yun, the 3 old immortals, also vanished into thin air. Muron, after Qing Dai finds Long Yu, you guys shall hurry over, Immortal Qing Yu's voice said from the distance. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 364. Dragon Rearing Sovereign. Wang Muron rode his buck over and shook his head. The old people are really worrisome. Qin Mu was astonished. Your side as well? Wang Muron nodded and said, there are 13 such elders in Little Jade Capital. Including the newly arrived old Taoist and old monk, we have 15 of them now. Qin Mu smiled and said, my village only has 8.5, so I can be said to be slightly luckier. Luckily, I have senior sister Qing Dai and senior brother Long Yu to help me share the burden, Wang Muron said. Qin Mu's face blackened. He was the only young person in their village. Granny C was also young, of course. However, she always liked to act old. The 2 of them walked forward at a steady pace while waiting for Mu Qing Dai to find Long Yu. Not long later, she dragged Long Yu back, who looked slipshod. He had removed all of his clothing, and when Mu Qing Dai found him, he was sprinting around in the capital city only in his underpants, dancing and singing while babbling nonsense. At that time, Mu Qing Dai gave this big senior brother 3 slaps to wake him up. Long Yu then spat out a few mouthfuls of blood that had clotted his heart and followed her with his head held low. Wang Muron let the 2 of them sit on the back of the buck. Even though Long Yu was no longer crazy, he had still crumbled. Qin Mu smiled and said, Senior brother Long Yu, what's the difference between knowing and not knowing how high and thick is the sky? The sky is there no matter if you know about it or don't. It is still there. Maintain your heart as usual and work hard to cultivate. You should focus on breaking the sky and going outside once you have gained enough strength. I understand what Human Emperor is trying to convey, but whenever I think that all of this is fake, I can't help losing my fighting spirit, Long Yu said sorrowfully. Qin Mu understood this kind of feeling. Not everyone could walk out of the shadow as fast as Tao Master Lin Xian. The astronomical phenomenon was fake, and this incident dealt the greatest blow to Tao Master Lin Xian. However, Long Yu didn't have the position and the responsibility of Tao Master Lin Xian, so his ability to handle shock was slightly inferior. However, given enough time, Long Yu would also walk out of the shadow. Since senior brother Long Yu is here, let us hurry on our way. Wang Muron gave an order, and clouds immediately grew under the buck's feet as it rose into to leave. The dragon Qilin immediately followed after, and the buck looked back with a disdainful glance, increasing its speed. The dragon Qilin was furious and tried his best to keep up. After 100 miles of running, the dragon Qilin started to pant heavily with his eyes rolling backward. There's no need for me to stoop to the level of a dumb buck, right? Cult Master, I'm right, aren't I? We are not competing in speed, but in endurance. Qin Mu acknowledged it with a black face. The dragon Qilin slowed down and looked at the buck, bringing Wang Muron and the rest to disappear into the distance. The dragon Qilin ran 5,000 miles and was so tired that he couldn't catch his breath. He whined for a break, so Qin Mu allowed him a stop. He made a fire to cook a meal while the dragon Qilin snored while sprawled on the ground. Once Qin Mu finished eating and drinking, he called the dragon Qilin for quite some time before he slowly crawled up and hurried along unwillingly. He ran from day to night and night to day, yet still couldn't see the buck, nor Wang Muron and the rest. That dumb buck's endurance isn't bad as well, Fatty Dragon said ashamedly. Qin Mu acknowledged it with a black face and threw over 1 scarlet fire spirit pill. Your rations for today. The dragon Qilin was aware of his own incompetence and carefully licked the pill. He didn't dare to eat it in 1 mouthful. After licking it for over a dozen times, he finally finished it. In the end, Qin Mu couldn't bear to be so cruel and grabbed some more for him. The dragon Qilin was elated, and he immediately ate all of them. He said, Cult Master, don't worry. I will run with all my life and will definitely catch up to that dumb buck. That buck isn't dumb. My dragon Qilin is the dumb one, Qin Mu criticized. The dragon Qilin sprinted through the sky. Not long later, lingering notes of a flute reached them, and Qin Mu looked around in astonishment. The dragon Qilin was running in midair, and even though his speed couldn't be compared to that of the buck from Little Jade Capital, it wasn't slow. Wind howled past them as he moved. For the sound of the flute to be able to reach them, it couldn't have been played by an ordinary person. As Qin Mu thought that, the dragon Qilin suddenly swayed his head to follow the sound of the flute as though he was drunk. He sprinted down from the sky. The sound of the flute was very charming. It played a style of folk song that was sometimes high and sometimes low, sounding very cheerful and light-hearted. Thus the dragon Qilin also danced around in the sky, skipping here and there in glee. His big tail whooshed as he swept it around. Another long note came from the flute, and the dragon Qilin sprinted straight downwards, into a forest. "Fatty dragon, stop!" Qin Mu immediately shouted, but what could it help when the dragon Qilin seemed to be entranced? He totally couldn't hear those words and seemed to not have any control of his own body as he rushed straight down. Qin Mu hurriedly rose into the sky and flashed to the front of the dragon Qilin. He pressed his two hands on the dragon Qilin's head and pushed with force as he shouted, "Fatty dragon, wake up!" He used the incantations of Buddhism, and his voice boomed like thunder. However, the dragon Qilin continued to rush forward as though he heard nothing. Qin Mu erupted with all his strength, but he still couldn't fight against the strength of the dragon Qilin. He got pushed into the forest, and cold sweat started to drip from Qin Mu's forehead. The sound of the flute was becoming clearer and louder. He turned back to take a look and saw a huge red flood dragon coiled around the mountain with its huge head lying on the ground. Its mouth was wide open like a gigantic cave, while its teeth were like sharp stalactites that were dripping with saliva. The sound of the flute was coming from the head of the red dragon, where a girl in a long dress was sitting. Even though the song was cheerful, the girl's face was ice cold. "Long Jiaonan." Qin Mu was astonished and looked around in a hurry. The flood dragon should belong to the Dragon King, and since it was there with the girl, did it mean that the Dragon King was nearby as well? The melodious sound of the flute meandered, and the dragon Qilin ran happily toward the mouth of the flood dragon. A cold gaze flashed across Qin Mu's eyes as Carefree Sword rose into the air. 8,000 swords instantly flew out and shot towards Long Jiaonan without any explanation. She sneered at him, and the tail of the red flood dragon swept over. Countless swords clanked as they hit the tail, bouncing backward. Qin Mu's heart sunk. This flood dragon was an existence of cult master level. In other words, way too strong. It would be hard for him to escape. At that moment, a huge hand suddenly stretched down from the sky as a voice that boomed like thunder rang out. What luck! To be able to pick up a flood dragon just by coming down to the mortal world to take a stroll. The hand, which was covered in rough scales, grabbed toward the red flood dragon. The large creature filled with terror, its expression betraying it, and actually turned limp. The dragon Qilin also collapsed on the ground, not daring to move. Long Jiaonan immediately gathered her vital qi to play the flute, but the red flood dragon just shrunk into itself and didn't move at all. Long Jiaonan immediately flew up and avoided the hand, but that hand did not mind her. It picked the red flood dragon of the Dragon King with a gently grasp before pulling it into the clouds. The voice in the sky laughed then. There's also a dragon of the Qilin breed, but a pity it's too young. I shall come back for it after letting it grow for a few more years. Coming down to the mortal world is truly good. Got a flood dragon. Qin Mu's mind was blown as he raised his head to look up. In the clouds, there was a giant that flying in the sky while stepping on 2 flood dragons, one green and one red. On his ears hung 2 yellow flood dragons as well. God! Qin Mu shook his head and found it hard to compose himself. When he looked over once more, the green and red flood dragons had slithered forward, carrying the god toward the south. My father's dragon! Long Jiaonan screeched and sprinted to the south frantically. Qin Mu suppressed the astonishment in his heart and raised his hand to summon Carefree Sword back. With a stab, 8,000 swords transformed into a sword cloud which suddenly rained down, covering the entire mountain mound. Long Jiaonan grunted and slithered around like a huge snake to avoid the sword lights. However, there was some that she couldn't avoid and was stabbed. Long Jiaonan, do you still remember? I said if you lay your hands on me again, I will not show you mercy anymore. Qin Mu woke up the dragon Qilin with a kick while he rushed forward. With his sword lights whooshing up like a tidal wave, he attacked Long Jiaonan. Her body moved like a spirit snake, at an extremely fast speed, but the next moment, Qin Mu's speed burst forth as he rose into the air, rushing forward with his sword cloud. Long Jiaonan hissed continuously as she circulated her magic power to execute divine arts to take on the sword lights. The dragon Qilin woke up and hurriedly rushed forward. When he roared, the vibrations confused Long Jiaonan. Even though she was a strong practitioner of Seven Stars realm, she was still lacking when faced with the dragon Qilin. Her aura dispersed from the roar, and Qin Mu immediately took that chance. With his sword fingers stabbing down, countless flying swords circled around Carefree Sword and went toward Long Jiaonan like a single huge treasure sword. Who dares to bully my son? Suddenly, a thick and heavy voice rang out, and Qin Mu's heart trembled violently. The Dragon King is here. He hurriedly recalled his swords, wishing to escape as a dragon-shaped dark cloud rushed toward them at a rapid speed. But Long Jiaonan raised her head to shout, "Father, it's the heavenly devil cult master." Qin Mu rushed to the front of the dragon Qilin and shouted, "Fatty dragon, I've raised you for 1,000 days to be all paid back in this hour. Quickly run." The dragon Qilin was about to exert all his force to sprint when his 4 limbs turned numb again, making him sprawl over on the ground. He shouted, "Cult master, it's back." "What's back?" Qin Mu raised both of his hands and picked the dragon Qilin up. He was about to run away when the sky turned dark again, and a thunderous voice rang out, "I'm still lacking a virgin male and a virgin female to raise the dragons, and it just so happens that I can take the 2 of you." The dragon Qilin was completely limp as though he was dead. He was totally paralyzed. Only then did Qin Mu understand what was back. His world started to spin, and his body landed on the cloud against his wishes. With him was Long Jiaonan, who was also still in shock. "Where's Sorcerer from? Place my son down." The sound of the Dragon King came from a distance, closing in rapidly. Qin Mu saw 2 thick and sturdy legs beside him in the cloud, covered in rough scales. In the cloud under those 2 legs, there were 2 flood dragons flying forward, carrying them to the south. He raised his head to take a look and saw a giant that was over 30 yards in height. His clothes fluttered in the wind, revealing his face covered in scales. His brow ridge was high and there were horns on his head. "Noisy bug." The god gave a flick, and the Dragon King of Dragon Rider sect flew backward, spewing blood in the air. He crashed into a huge mountain and his life and death were unknown. "Virgin male and virgin female, serve my dragons well." The god lowered his head to look at the 2 of them in the clouds and grinned to show his mouth, which was full of sharp teeth. "Otherwise, I will use you 2 as toothpicks." Qin Mu placed the dragon Qilin down and said bravely, "Senior, my primordial yang is long discharged, and I'm no longer a virgin male." Long Jiaonan immediately said as well, "My primordial yin is also long discharged, and I'm also not a virgin female." That god sneered and said, "In that case, there's no use keeping you alive. I shall eat then. I'm a virgin male." Qin Mu said righteously, "But this naughty girl is no longer a virgin female, so may Senior please kill her." Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 365. Skilled in a specialized area. Long Jiaonan pounced forward and shouted, "Rascal! It's all because of you that I'm like this." Buddha rays burst forth from Qin Mu's hand as he collided with her. Their bodies trembled violently, and Long Jiaonan's beautiful hair suddenly fell to the ground, revealing bald patches. The skin of her face also suddenly turned loose. Qin Mu's qi and blood fluctuated. He was about to make another move when he was suddenly stunned. He didn't continue to attack. On the East Sea, Long Jiaonan had almost died under the combined attacks of Ling Yuxiu and Si Yunxiang. She tried her best to shed her skin, but she had exhausted her lifespan for that. Even though she was taken away by Dao Master, she had yet to recover. When clashing with Qin Mu, the wig on her head had fallen apart, and the pulled tight skin had also turned loose. Long Jiaonan noticed her hair falling off and cried out in astonishment. She immediately grabbed here and there to pick up her hair. Every time she caught a lock, she would try to stick it back on her head, but since the wig had already fallen apart, how could she stick it back together? Sister Long, you don't have much of your lifespan left. If you don't fight with your life, you can still live like an ordinary person for dozens of years. But if you make a move on me, I won't even need to kill you. A severe injury will be enough to make sure you'll have no chance at survival. Qin Mu shook his head and said, "It's impossible for you to take revenge on me in this life anymore. So what is this for? You are the one who reduced me to this state, and you are still being sarcastic." Long Jiaonan shouted out, "You are the one who harmed yourself and your father, and the Dragon King is also someone who harmed you. I'm not responsible for it. Pushing the blame on me is nothing more than you trying to find someone to vent your anger on." Qin Mu examined the thick and sturdy legs beside him and raised his head to take a look. The god was currently looking down, but not at them. Instead, he was surveying the terrain of Eternal Peace Empire. It was obvious that the god paid no attention to them and felt that they posed no threat to him. Their only use was to help him raise his dragons. Qin Mu composed himself and calculated his chances of escaping if he executed heaven-pilfering divine legs. Then he immediately banished the thought. Even though heaven-pilfering divine legs were fast and he could surpass the speed of sound by 4 times and more if he exerted his full force, he could only maintain that state for a very short time. His vital qi would be completely exhausted in 7 minutes, and so would his body. Based on the speed of the 2 flood dragons under the god's feet, he could create a distance between them, but they wouldn't find it hard to catch up to him once he faltered. Besides, the rubbish that was the Dragon Qilin was paralyzed and couldn't stand up no matter what. If Qin Mu had to carry the Dragon Qilin on the distance he could cover would be limited. The Dragon Qilin was simply too fat and too heavy. Isn't it just raising a dragon? I'm raising Fatty Dragon every day, so it'll be simple to me. Qin Mu sat down, the body of a flood dragon under his buttocks. With skill in his hands, he was not afraid. If he could even raise Fatty Dragon, how could he not raise flood dragons? "How do we address Senior?" Qin Mu asked loudly. "You can call me Dragon-Rearing Sovereign." The god's voice boomed like thunder when he spoke while looking around. "I'm a god from high heavens, and as long as you serve my dragons well, I will spare your lives. Not only that, I will even bring you away from this mortal world to high heavens to enjoy life as you raise my dragons." Long Jiaonan's eyes lit up, and she said loudly, "Founder, I'm a disciple of Dragon Rider Sect. Dragon Rider Sect is the sect that you founded." Qin Mu suddenly shuddered. "Crap, this dragon-rearing sovereign is the founder of Dragon Rider Sect." He couldn't help regretting asking the god how to address him. Now that Long Jiaonan had established their relationship, he was going to die. He wanted to flee, but no matter how much he kicked the Dragon Qilin, the fatty just lay on the limply, unable to get up. "I'm skilled in a specialized area. I'm skilled in a specialized area." Qin Mu consoled himself while trying to regain his composure. Dragon Rider Sect? The 2 dragons below Dragon-Rearing Sovereign's feet paused, and the god lowered his head to look at Long Jiaonan. With bewilderment, he said, "I indeed founded this sect, but that was something long ago. Founding Dragon Rider Sect was just something I found interesting at that time. That's why I didn't bother myself with it after gonna high heavens. You are the disciple of Dragon Rider Sect? Who was the idiot who called you his son just now?" Long Jiaonan was both surprised and delighted. She immediately knelt down and kowtowed. "That's Disciple's father, the current Dragon Rider Sect master. His cultivation is so weak to actually be flicked off by me. He won't die, though." The 2 dragons under Dragon-Rearing Sovereign's feet started to descend, and he said, "Since you are a disciple of Dragon Rider Sect, I won't make things difficult for you. You seem to have damaged your vital qi, so here's a dragon bead for you to nurse yourself. Even though it won't return your beauty to what it was, it can still replenish your vitality and extend your lifespan." A bright orange bead flew down from above, and Long Jiaonan grabbed it. She then kowtowed repeatedly while saying sternly, "Founder, that man is a nemesis of our Dragon Rider sect, the one person that eradicated it." Qin Mu shrunk his neck back and shook his head. "Maiden Long, please do not accuse my innocence, person. Look at my cultivation, how could I eradicate your Dragon Rider sect? It's such a big sacred ground with as many experts as a cow has hair. Each and every one of them has remarkable abilities and are extraordinary. On top of that, the dragons they raise are all powerful beings, so how would I have the ability to eradicate them?" Dragon-rearing sovereign examined him. He was clearly a very honest youth and looked much more reliable than Long Jiaonan. "This honest child that's as weak as a chicken can eradicate a sect that I founded? Are you guys that weak?" Long Jiaonan gritted her teeth and shouted, "This brat summoned a devil god which killed my entire sect." With an honest face, Qin Mu stuttered as he tried to defend himself. "When did I do that? I learned the art of healing when I was young and am acclaimed as the divine physician. Every day, I prescribe medicine and raise a dragon qilin, feeding him until he got so plump. How could I summon a devil god to harm people? Not only are you slandering me, you are even insulting me." Long Jiaonan was furious and jumped over to choke him. She screeched, "You are the heavenly devil cult master and your mind is full of evil ideas to harm people. You are the devil among the devils." Qin Mu couldn't take a breath and his eyes rolled upward. Suddenly, Dragon-rearing sovereign gave a flick and made Long Jiaonan tumble back a few times. She crashed to the ground, and only then did she notice that they had already descended. The two flood dragons under Dragon-rearing sovereign's feet had brought them to Gold River. "Are you the one who fed this dragon of the Qilin breed until he got so plump?" Dragon-rearing sovereign lifted Qin Mu up in his palm and examined him up and down. He smiled and said, "You have fed him well. Not bad. I like you very much." When Qin Mu faced him, his heart shuddered. Dragon-rearing sovereign was too huge, and just his face alone was much taller than Qin Mu's whole body. He was covered with dragon scales, and only his brow ridge that was raised was free of them. Instead, there were two eyebrows that were shaped like feathers. "Senior," Qin Mu gathered his courage and said, "I've learned the art of healing ever since I was young, and my medical techniques are passable. I feed my dragon qilin half a bucket of scarlet fire spirit pills every day." "Half a bucket of scarlet fire spirit pills?" Dragon-rearing sovereign chuckled. "Looks like your pill refinement technique is truly extraordinary, to actually refine so many spirit pills daily. How could a young-un with a child body like him need to eat half a bucket every day? All he needs is a bowl of scarlet fire spirit pills, and that's enough." Qin Mu's face instantly turned black. Dragon-rearing sovereign then added, "However, all the pills he ate were not wasted. They turned into dragon and qilin vitality which are stored in his body. Once that power is activated, he will be able to cultivate his dragon bead and qilin fire, both of which are quite extraordinary. Only then could he be considered as just having become an adult. I see that even though you know how to refine pills, you don't know how to raise dragons. Are you willing to learn from me?" "Disciple is willing to." Long Jiaonan was furious. The black-hearted scum was taking this opportunity to actually climb above her head to become a disciple of her founder. "I asked if you want to learn from me and not if you want to be my disciple. You are just a small boy." Dragon-rearing sovereign smiled and said, "Don't be in a hurry to pay your respects, since I'm not taking in disciples. But as long as you serve my dragons well, it won't be impossible for me to take you in as my disciple in the future. Now, refine a furnace of scarlet fire spirit pills for me to take a look." Qin Mu immediately burst forth with vital qi and took out some herbs from his taotai sack to refine the pills in midair. While Dragon-rearing sovereign was talking, he finished refining one pill of scarlet fire spirit pills. Dragon-rearing sovereign revealed an astonished expression which turned into great delight. He laughed and said, "I'll take you in. It'll free me from numerous mundane tasks. From today onwards, you will be in charge of refining pills. I can then relax." He raised his leg to give the dragon qilin a kick and said, "Little thing, I shall teach you the technique to cultivate the dragon bead and the Qilin fire, so you can help start the fire to refine the pills. The dragon Qilin could finally stand. He was surprised and delighted. Qin Mu's mood swiftly lifted. Grandpa Def frequently said that each and every variety of studying is the highest thing to be sought, while Grandpa Apothecary's art of healing is useless. One might have to pay the patient until bankruptcy in case of misdiagnosis. In comparison, studying and painting can help you make a living anywhere. Yet in the end, Grandpa Def almost starved to death while selling his paintings on the streets, and Grandpa Apothecary's medical expertise make my life easy wherever I go. Little girl, come over. Long Jiaonan lowered her head and walked forward so dragon-rearing sovereign could examine her up and down. He shook his head and said, "You also know some skills on how to raise a dragon, so you shall be his attendant and help me raise my dragons. Remember, don't slander him anymore or I won't forgive you." Long Jiaonan was seething with anger, but had no choice other than to nod in agreement. Pleased with that, Qin Mu asked, "What is Dragon Sovereign doing here at Gold River?" "Searching for the main dragon's vein of Eternal Peace Empire." An earring on dragon-rearing sovereign's ear swayed and slithered down, transforming into a yellow flood dragon. Its body became longer and longer when it slithered into the river with an aura that was growing more and more terrifying. The current of Gold River was rapid, and the moment the flood dragon swam in, it started to stir up havoc. The water instantly rose into the sky, creating a flowing river in the sky. This is where Gold River Dragon's abdomen lies. Its claws are nearby as well. Dragon-rearing sovereign looked at the bottom of the river and revealed an expression of disappointment as he shook his head. This place isn't the main dragon's vein. Qin Mu also looked down at the bottom of the river and was slightly stunned. He saw that the current had actually washed out stones that looked like pieces of dragon scales. From their path, he could faintly see that they actually had the shape of claws. River has the river Qi which will gather to form a dragon's vein. It will be water. When mountain Qi will gather to form a dragon's vein, it will be the land. If fire Qi like magma will gather to form a dragon's vein, it will be fire. These are the dragon's veins that people generally know. However, there's also a fourth kind of dragon's vein, which is wind. The wind blows tens of thousands of miles and carves out traces of a dragon among the mountains and land. Dragon-rearing sovereign raised his head to look up and said in a low voice, "I have checked the wind veins and the mountain veins. Mud River and Gold River are also both checked. If I continue forward, I will have to check the 3 veins of the fire dragon that are underground. With Eternal Peace Empire having so many dragon's veins, I'm afraid a big dragon is coming. But if I take away the main dragon's vein, all the dragons will have no leader and, Kiki, the world will fall into utter chaos." Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 366. True Dragon Lord. Eternal Peace Empire is truly full of disasters. After the mutiny and rebel, there was the descent of a natural disaster, followed by the alliance of Barbarian D-Empire and Wolf Store Country to invade them. Now a dragon-rearing sovereign hops out who wants to take away the main dragon's vein. Qin Mu sighed ruefully in his heart. Emperor Yanfeng truly had a hard time being the emperor, pushing even him to clear up all the shit repeatedly. Sunshot Divine Cannon I forged could be used to kill this dragon-rearing sovereign. Although the battery is still at the capital and Emperor Yanfeng is not here, Qin Mu was suddenly stunned. He had never been part of Eternal Peace Empire, so why did he have to risk his life for it? When he walked out of Great Ruins, it was for no other reason than to gain experience and improve. His goal hadn't been to protect Eternal Peace Empire, so when had his original intention changed without his awareness? Not so long ago, he had still viewed Eternal Peace Empire as an enemy for treating the people of Great Ruins as abandoned and good only to be slaves. When had his views changed and he began to treat Eternal Peace Empire's matters as his own? Wasn't what he was supposed to do to gain experience? Wasn't he supposed to fight for the survival of Great Ruins people? When had he then started to treat Eternal Peace Empire like his second home? Subconsciously treating its matters as his own? He looked deep into his heart and discovered the cruel and fascinating truth there. The complexity and changes of the human heart surpassed any reforms and changes in the paths, skills, and divine arts. Qin Mu reflected on his own heart, which was calm. As the human emperor, he wasn't doing things for Eternal Peace Empire, but for the people of that land. If Emperor Yanfeng was unkind and incompetent, he would have him replaced. If Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor failed in his reform, he would then take it from his hands and proceed with it himself. But even if Eternal Peace Empire's reform was good, if Emperor Yanfeng invaded Great Ruins and made the people of Great Ruins slaves, he would get rid of him. Qin Mu blinked and felt that this was pure and simple. We're here. The two dragons under dragon-rearing sovereign's feet suddenly paused and stopped in their tracks. Qin Mu looked around, slightly stunned. There were huge volcanoes everywhere, and thick smoke was billowing from their mouths. However, there wasn't any lava spurting out. Time and time again, Qi cultivators would come up to the mountain to gather underground fire, which was used for cultivating fire divine arts. This was Volcano County of Eternal Peace Empire, named for the numerous volcanoes in its territory. 90% of Eternal Peace Empire's volcanoes were gathered there. It also had the biggest volcano, which was called Great White Mountain. It was extremely high, and its peak was covered with snow while the mouth was bubbling with lava. Dragon-rearing sovereign looked around, and his gaze landed on Great White Mountain. He smiled and said, "The dragon's eyes are there." The two dragons under his feet rose into the air, and he came to the peak of Great White Mountain. Located there was a sect who, unlike the three big sacred grounds of Eternal Peace Empire, had suffered from enormous pressure like the other sections. It had gone through a sharp drop in disciples due to the primary schools and colleges located everywhere. The sect at the peak of Great White Mountain was called Great White Sword Sect. Their population was sparse, and there were only 100 disciples on the mountain. Dragon-rearing sovereign brought Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan and descended directly on the mountain. He came to the hinterland of Great White Sword Sect, which was the entrance to the volcano. The experts of the sect were alarmed and flooded out like bees. When they saw dragon-rearing sovereign and a bunch of dragons, they were dumbstruck and didn't dare to move. A fire flood dragon under dragon-rearing sovereign flew out and tunneled into the volcano. After a moment, a passage was opened, and multicolored light burst into the sky, turning it golden. Qin Mu looked inside the volcano and grew giddy. The interior of the volcano was actually not made of lava, but dragon scales that were shining in a radiant gold color. It stretched down from the inside the mountain and went down all the way to the unknown depths. The people of Great White Sword Sect were also stunned. Great White Sword Sect had occupied that land for a few thousand years. Yet they didn't know that there was another completely different world inside the volcano. However, they still didn't dare to move. Senior, the sect leader of Great White Sword Sect, mustered his courage to go forward, but just as he was about to say a word, the huge dragons under dragon-rearing sovereign's feet carried him, Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan, into the volcano. Sect leader, those people barged into the forbidden ground of our sword sect. A middle-aged man shouted out. What do we do now? The face of the sect leader of Great White Sword Sect changed between dark and clear. He said, I recognized that youth just now, its heavenly devil cult master. That old devil actually brought such a terrifying expert who has actually raised so many dragons. The sacred ground of the devil path has a truly justified reputation. Their foundation is indeed deep. Our Great White Sword Sect is not their opponent, so what can we do? Of course, we shall file a complaint to the imperial court. Everyone in the sword sect was stunned. File a complaint to the imperial court? Wouldn't this be too embarrassing? If we file a complaint to the imperial court, the emperor and imperial preceptor won't ignore it. The sect leader rose and said, I shall head to the capital to file an imperial appeal, and will definitely have the emperor make Heavenly Devil Cult give us Great White Sword Sect an answer. In the volcano, Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan followed behind dragon-rearing sovereign, looking around at the spacious underground space. The walls were all made of radiant dragon scales. Qin Mu stretched out his hand to touch one and felt that it was scorching. It was akin to magma, but not it. Maybe this will be the main dragon's vein. The dragon chi that has gathered in this underground is about to transform into a divine dragon and fly away. Dragon-rearing sovereign then added in astonishment, This dragon's vein seems to be slightly better than the 9 mountain veins in Eternal Peace Capital City. Qin Mu asked curiously, Dragon Sovereign visited the 9 dragons' veins in the capital? What's the situation there? Even though Qin Mu had gone to the capital numerous times, he had never gone to see the mountain there. The capital was surrounded by 9 dragons, and the dragon chi there was thick and extraordinary. People living there usually had longer lifespans and could cultivate twice as fast, especially in Imperial College and the Imperial Palace. Those were the places in which the dragon chi was concentrated. The dragon's veins at Eternal Peace Capital City are 9 yellow dragons. I went into the interior of the mountain and saw that they had hollowed out the center of the mountain. They had already transformed into chi which had scales and claws, Dragon Rearing Sovereign said. However, they are still chi and have not formed their bodies yet. Meanwhile, the fire dragon here is almost taking shape. Qin Mu was puzzled. Long Jiaonan touched the dragon scales and asked, What Founder means is that the dragon scales of this dragon's vein are true dragon scales and not marks? Of course they are true dragon scales, Dragon Rearing Sovereign said. Flood dragons are not considered true dragons. They are merely huge snakes that had absorbed the dragon chi and transformed. True dragons are born from chi and transformed from dragon's veins. All things in the world are born from egg or the womb. However, true dragons are born from chi. Chi gives birth to a true dragon, which then gives birth to eggs or fetus. You have been to Great Ruins, right? There are numerous ruins of dragon kings there. So why are there so many dragon kings in Great Ruins? It was all because back then, there were hundreds of dragons' veins, and their fate was prosperous, to the extent that they transformed into true dragons. Qin Mu's heart trembled. Hundreds of dragons' veins? Prosperous fate. Dragons' veins transforming into true dragons. He had indeed seen a Dragon King temple in the basin of East Sea. Not only that, there was also a Dragon King temple in Surging River, and even a temple for dragon kings such as Dragon King. Could those dragon kings had all been true dragons? True dragons transformed from the dragon's veins of Great Ruins surrendered and paid their allegiance to the He. Dragon Rearing Sovereign seemed to be afraid of the consequences of finishing his thought and didn't continue. Instead, he said, Eternal Peace Empire now is still considered small, with only 10 to 20 dragons' veins. However, in order to prevent trouble in the future, I have to find the main dragon's vein. Otherwise, if Eternal Peace Empire is allowed to continue growing, it might just be able to bring another calamity. Finding the main dragon's vein and killing it as soon as possible is thus the proper thing to do. They looked toward the depths and suddenly heard a dull roar of a dragon. Qin Mu's spirit was roused. Is this fire dragon's vein really going to transform into a true dragon? When he came to the front, only then did he notice the roar wasn't from a true dragon. Instead, it came from an underground magma river that was dozens of miles wide. The 4 walls around it were all covered with dragon scales that were shining a brilliant gold, dazzling their eyes. Qin Mu felt an extremely strong dragon chi. He had cultivated Ling family's 9 dragons monarch technique and his attainments were quite high. So he immediately knew that the dragon chi here wouldn't lose that in the capital. There was the dragon chi of the 9 dragons' veins gathered together over there, while there was only a fire dragon's vein here, yet the dragon chi was just as strong. Could then this really be the place where the main dragon's vein of Eternal Peace Empire laid? Strange. Dragon Rearing Sovereign frowned and examined the upstream and downstream of the magma river. Weird. The path of the dragon's vein here seems wrong. Dragon Rearing Sovereign walked down from the backs of the 2 flood dragons. Qin Mu took a look at his legs and saw that they weren't human feet. Instead, they were 2 dragon claws. Dragon Rearing Sovereign took out a small and delicate golden cauldron. Or it was so to him, but to Qin Mu it was large enough to cook 2 or 3 humans without a problem. Dragon Rearing Sovereign scooped out magma with it before taking out some golden power to scatter it inside the cauldron. He then waited silently. Qin Mu went forward to take a look and saw the golden powder fusing with magma, gradually changing. Dragon Rearing Sovereign tossed him a golden book and a Taotai sack while saying, The dragon's vein here is weird. It doesn't seem to just be a simple dragon's vein. I want to cast a spell to investigate something the fishiness here. You shall refine a few furnaces of pills to feed the dragons. There are prescriptions in this book, so don't mess up. Qin Mu understood and took the golden book, which was called Dragon Rearing Scripture. He flipped through, noticing that it recorded all the methods for raising a dragon. It also listed all dragon types, their habits and properties, the methods to control them, and finally what each type of dragon ate. Qin Mu didn't care about the spirit pills recorded inside. What made him curious was the method to refine them. Apothecary had taught him numerous kinds of hand techniques to refine pills, yet there were many inside dragon rearing scripture that he'd never seen before. As expected of the god who raises dragons, there are so many methods to refining pills. From the prescriptions and the methods for refining the pills, Dragon Rearing Sovereign's ability in the path of pill refinement might just be slightly weaker than mine. Qin Mu became alert in his heart. If he wanted to refine a deadly poison for Dragon Rearing Sovereign, it probably wouldn't be easy. He secretly banished that thought and continued to study the book. Dragons of different attributes consumed different spirit pills. For example, the dragon Qilin was of fire attribute, so scarlet fire spirit pills were very suitable for him. However, after Qin Mu checked, he found out that scarlet fire spirit wasn't the most suitable for the dragon Qilin. It was simply that its taste for him was the best. For a dragon Qilin, fire element divine vitality pill was the best. It could help them grow, increasing their sprinting speed drastically. However, divine vitality pill didn't have a nice taste as it was a little spicy. No wonder that glutton always wants to eat scarlet fire spirit pills, and even so many of them. Qin Mu's face turned dark, and he took a glance at the dragon Qilin, who was looking around curiously. With an unpleasant face, he said, "Maid, come over, help me refine pills." Long Jiaonan gritted her teeth and walked forward, wishing she could swallow him in one mouthful. Qin Mu kicked the dragon Qilin. "Fatty dragon, have you heard of fire element divine vitality pill?" "I've never heard of it before," the dragon Qilin said with some guilt. Qin Mu snorted and opened up Dragon Rearing Sovereign's Taotai sack. Inside it was all kinds of spirit herbs. Qin Mu differentiated them before throwing them to Long Jiaonan, asking her to take out the herbs according to the prescription. He then ordered the dragon Qilin to spew fire while he executed a pill refinement technique. He executed all kinds of hand techniques and dazzled people's eyes. Like that, he soon refined batches of spirit pills. The numerous small dragons on Dragon Rearing Sovereign's body smelled the fragrance and immediately ran down his body to surround Qin Mu. The big ones were 3 yards long, while the smallest ones were not even an inch. There were dragons of all sizes, color, and even species raising their heads to look at him. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 367. Underground of Great Ruins. Dragon Rearing Sovereign's spell to calculate the dragon's veins is pretty brilliant. Qin Mu looked at the dragon-shaped qi that was swimming in the golden cauldron. This kind of calculation skill of Dragon Rearing Sovereign seemed to be able to calculate some auspicious mountains and lands. For example, Great White Sword Sect was built on top of the dragon's eyes, and it seemed to be located on an auspicious land. However, according to the picture in Dragon Rearing Sovereign's cauldron, this place wasn't an auspicious land. Instead, it was a land where a group of dragons seized fortune from others to support the true dragon lord. Sects that resided nearby would have most of their fortune seized, causing them to go downhill and wither with every passing day. No wonder Great White Sword Sect had fallen to such a state today, he secretly exclaimed in his heart. Dragon Rearing Sovereign put away the golden cauldron, and Qin Mu immediately returned Dragon Rearing Scripture to him. The god shook his head and said, "Take it and study first. As a boy that raises dragons, you need to know the habits of all kinds of dragon well. There are also skills that deal with rearing dragons inside which you should comprehend carefully. I shall give you 2 days' time, and how much you can comprehend will depend on your comprehension. I will take the book back after 2 days." Long Jiaonan's expression instantly turned black. Dragon Rearing Sovereign didn't know about Qin Mu's terrifying comprehension, but she knew it very well. On the empty island on the East Sea, Dao Master had shown the 14 writings of Dao Sword to Qin Mu for 10 days, and the youth's comprehension of Dao Sword was no inferior to that of Dao Zilin Xian. Even if Dragon Rearing Scripture was a technique of a god, it wouldn't be more difficult to comprehend that Dao sword. Probably even easier. Dao sword involved algebra, so the higher one's attainments in algebra were, the easier it would be to comprehend Dao sword. However, how hard was algebra? Dragon-rearing scripture was more about raising dragons, controlling, and living together with dragons. The technique inside Secrets of Dragon Control was the unique studies of Dragon Rider sect, which consisted of the technique to molt and rebirth. Even though Dragon Rider sect was the sect that Dragon-rearing sovereign had founded, the complete dragon-rearing scripture was never passed down. Even the sect master had only received an incomplete copy. Yet even so, Dragon Rider sect was considered an extremely powerful sect. Of course, it couldn't be compared to the three big sacred grounds, but it was reputable in the martial world. Otherwise, Emperor Yanfeng would not have let them lead an army by themselves. Eternal Peace Empire originally had a dragon army, and Dragon Rider sect led it. Even though Dragon-rearing sovereign had founded Dragon Rider sect, it didn't receive the complete dragon-rearing scripture. Yet Qin Mu, the scum, did. This naturally drove Long Jianan mad. How could it not when dragon-rearing sovereign trusted Qin Mu because of his honest appearance while not trusting Long Jianan? She felt helpless. Dragon-rearing sovereign didn't know what was on her mind. In the eyes of a god like him, keeping Qin Mu and Long Jianan by his side was an insignificant thing. It was like carrying two ants, and he naturally didn't need to know what those ants were thinking. If it wasn't because Qin Mu was more useful, his attitude toward him wouldn't have been better than that to Long Jianan. This was natural at the height he was standing. He was a god and nothing could threaten him. A small ant like Qin Mu naturally didn't mean anything to him, so there was no need to put it to heart. He only needed it to help him, after which giving the little ant some benefit would make it even more willing to help him. Even if the ant had ill intentions, it could be killed with just a flick of a finger. Besides, from how Qin Mu and Long Jianan looked and handled things, it was obvious that Qin Mu was more reliable. The tiny human had a natural earthy and honest feel to him, so it was obvious that he was more trustworthy than Long Jianan. Dragon-rearing sovereign brought them upstream, and as they walked, they went farther away from the surface. The magma river was originally buried deep underground and spanned over several thousand miles. Upstream was its source, which was dozens of miles underground. After walking for some time, they felt the surroundings becoming warmer. Qin Mu looked down at the river and saw more and more dragon scales on both sides. Besides them, there was also flesh and blood. He saw them growing out from the dragon scales along with long blood vessels. Compared to the huge underground dragon's vein, those blood vessels were as thin as hair, but to Qin Mu, they were passageways that were thicker than a water barrel. The blood vessels stretched in all directions as they followed along the river. There is blood flowing through them. He then discovered that the blood belonged to a true dragon. When the blood flowed, there would be sounds of mercury flowing rapidly. "This dragon's vein has grown a heart," said Dragon-rearing sovereign suddenly. Qin Mu could also hear a faint beating of a heart. The heartbeat grew louder and louder, until they saw the heart in the center of a magma lake. It was like a mountain which was hung in the air by numerous thick blood vessels, a good number of which were also rooted in the lake. With the beating of the dragon heart, the magma in the lake would flow backward and circulate through the entire heart as though it was cleansing it. When the beating stopped for a moment, the magma would fall back into the lake with splashes, waiting for the next time the heartbeat to flow in reverse again. In the surroundings of the magma lake, there were huge chunks of diamonds hanging from the walls, some of which were like stalactites while others were pillar-shaped crystals. Other than diamonds, there was also gold sand and chunks of solid gold lying on the ground. Qin Mu and Long Jianan were dazzled by that sight. Even though Eternal Peace Empire had mines throughout its land, they had never seen a mine with such fertile mineral resources. With the power of eternal peace, they could never mine to this place. Their gazes were blank. Even though great abundance coins was the currency of Eternal Peace Empire, gold was useful as well. Besides, diamond was an extremely durable material for forging treasures, and numerous eminent monks in Buddhism used them for that exact purpose. Thus, this kind of huge diamonds could be sold for a very high price. If only I could. What a pity, Long Jianan thought in her heart. I'm rich. Qin Mu's heart bloomed with joy. After getting rid of dragon-rearing sovereign, all this treasure will be mine. If this was anywhere else, I would definitely think that this fire dragon's vein was the main dragon's vein of Eternal Peace Empire. What a pity that this is only a smokescreen designed by those old fogies of great ruins. Dragon-rearing sovereign paid no attention to the golds and diamonds lying around and sneered. They might be able to deceive others, but they can't deceive me. Since great ruins is involved, the dragon's vein of the true dragon lord cannot be so weak and small. He took out his golden cauldron and checked before saying, "There's another dragon's vein nearby." He lifted the golden cauldron up and moved quickly to the front of the magma waterfall. With a smile, he said, "Right here." Dragon-rearing sovereign raised his hand to lift up the magma waterfall and saw another magma river on the other side. Man, I still need to cross a few magma dragon's veins to be able to find the one of the true dragon lord. Dragon-rearing sovereign's spirit was roused, and he brought Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan through the waterfall. He said with a smile, "However, this makes it more interesting. This trip down to the mortal world is not in vain." The dragon's vein they were in was also extremely extraordinary, and even of a higher quality than the one earlier. Besides the dragon scales, blood vessels, and vein lines of muscles on the four walls, some places also had organs. If it wasn't for the fire dragon's vein at the side, Qin Mu would have thought he had come inside of a true dragon. If the group of dragons is already like this, then what kind of dragon's vein would the true dragon lord be like? Qin Mu was secretly astonished. As they continued down and covered 10,000 miles, they came into contact with the third underground dragon's vein. Qin Mu frowned slightly. They were walking to the west. Volcano County was at the outback of Eternal Peace Empire, the central region. If they headed west and walked such a long distance, they should be very close to God-Broken Mountain Range. Qin Mu didn't know if Dragon-Rearing Sovereign was familiar with the geography of Eternal Peace and Great Ruins, but since Heavenly Devil Cult was originally dabbling in the smuggling business, they had to cross God-Broken Mountain Range. Qin Mu had also crossed it before and could determine it was right above them. Meanwhile, the third dragon's vein was still stretching out to the west. If they continued to head in that direction, they would enter Great Ruins. It should still be nighttime in Great Ruins currently. Qin Mu suppressed the pounding of his heart. Would the underground of Great Ruins be dangerous at night? Would the darkness shroud them as well? He couldn't be sure. However, there was nothing wrong about sticking close to Dragon-Rearing Sovereign. The abilities of this god were extremely powerful, and even if the darkness shrouded them, he could protect their lives. They continued forward until the underground dragon's vein in front of them became dim. The place was originally brightly lit by the intense light from the magma, but by then even the light seemed to be consumed by the darkness, leaving only a weak glow. Qin Mu gave the dragon Qilin a kick, and the slow creature came to realization. He immediately came forward and didn't dare to stray far away from Dragon-Rearing Sovereign. Long Jiaonan saw this and instantly understood what it meant. She also came closer to Dragon-Rearing Sovereign in a hurry. This woman is very quick-witted. It'd be best for me to get rid of her as soon as possible to prevent meeting with unexpected failure. Qin Mu frowned slightly. They didn't walk far before they saw a god statue erected upright in the center of the magma river. The god statue was giving off a faint glow and driving away the darkness in the surroundings. It's indeed the old fogies of Great Ruins who had messed around. Dragon Sovereign sneered and continued to walk forward. If I had not come down to check on the dragon's veins of Eternal Peace Empire, I might have just been fooled. He held his aura, not allowing it to leak out as he walked from the stone statue. It seemed that he was afraid of waking it up. This magma river flowed for a long distance, and every section of it would have a stone statue guarding the dragon's vein. Could be said how far they walked when they finally encountered the fourth dragon's vein. It no longer belonged to Eternal Peace, but was a dragon's vein of Great Ruins. Upon entering the fourth dragon's vein, Qin Mu calculated and realized that they had already passed by Border Dragon City and disabled Elderly Village. They were getting closer and closer to the outback of Great Ruins. The speed of the two flood dragons under Dragon-Rearing Sovereign's feet was extremely fast. They were countless times faster than the fat glutton, which was the dragon Qilin. A journey that took the dragon Qilin over a dozen days was covered by the 2 flood dragons in a day or two. When they came to the 5th dragon's vein, the darkness had already withdrawn and day had arrived. When they reached the 6th dragon's vein, Qin Mu was sure that they were in the underground of Great Ruin's central region. "We are close to the dragon's vein of the true dragon lord." Dragon-rearing sovereign spirit was greatly roused, and he smiled. "How's dragon-rearing scripture? It's also time for you to return it." Qin Mu handed back dragon-rearing scripture respectfully and said, "My aptitude is small and I only gained some little understanding. There are still some places that I don't understand. You're honest and sincere, lacking in sly intentions and not clever enough. There's naturally some places which are harder to understand," dragon-rearing sovereign said. "As long as you serve my dragons well, I will slowly explain this dragon-rearing scripture to you." Qin Mu was overjoyed. Long Jiaonan saw the expression on his face and wanted to pounce on him and strangle him to death, so he could maintain that honest smile on his face even in his death. "We are at the main dragon's vein." Dragon-rearing sovereign's spirit rose and he smiled. "I shall take it away from these old fogies and ruin their grand scheme that had lasted for 10,000 years in one day. Wait a minute. This is—" He revealed a puzzled look as he walked out of the 6th dragon's vein. As he looked around, the puzzlement on his face grew even stronger. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 368. Imminent Catastrophe. Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan walked forward. What connected the 6th dragon's vein and the main dragon's vein was actually a huge gate. On its 2 sides, there were numerous dragon-shaped reliefs. They looked vivid and lifelike, interesting and appealing, like true dragons. Not only were they in all kinds of shapes and denoting different breeds, they were also no inferior to 100 Dragons' portrait. Great Thunderclap Monastery's treasure only had 100 types of heavenly dragons, but there were as many as 1,000 types here. Dragon-shaped reliefs of all sizes surrounded a huge dragon that was coiling and raising its head upwards, looking straight at the people outside the wall. Some of the dragons were dancing in the air, some were crawling on the ground, and there were some which were sprawled on the floor hibernating. There were also some dragon-shaped reliefs that were staring at the ground as though there was something interesting below. There were also big dragons looking at small dragons playing around, some of which had even climbed onto the whiskers of the huge dragon. They were hanging down and frolicking in all kinds of poses. The huge dragon was sculpted to be formidable and terrifying. It possessed the air of a divine dragon, yet it also had a wild and savage side to it. Its gaze stared directly at the people that had come to the place, making it hard for anyone to look back at him. "This huge dragon is the true dragon lord? If I could comprehend it, my comprehension to Thunderclap 8 strikes might just reach their extreme point, and I could probably even create new divine arts." Qin Mu's heart was greatly moved. Old Ma was skilled in sculpting, Deaf was skilled in painting, and Mute was skilled in smithing, so they had taught Qin Mu numerous things. He could admire the beauty of the reliefs of the 1,000 dragons, but he could see much more than just that. The reliefs of the gate and the others had been sculpted with a hatchet. Qin Mu could almost see a god wielding a huge hatchet and moving its heavy frame as though it was as light as the wind. The unwieldy tool became the finest brush, both coarse and wild, letting the god scrawl freely and willfully. This resulted in a set of world-shaking hatchet skills that the god could use to his heart's content. "Strange, strange." Dragon-rearing sovereign's voice came from the other side of the gate, sounding very anxious. It seemed that he had encountered something he didn't understand. Qin Mu walked through the tall gate and was slightly stunned. Below his feet was an empty abyss, while in the surroundings was thick magma running down the 4 walls while giving off world-shaking rumbles. They were in a straight and circular hole. It was so perfect that it seemed like it had been sliced out. But there was no main dragon's vein that dragon-rearing sovereign had expected. He lifted the golden cauldron and flew to the center of the abyss. He examined the true dragon lord inside his treasure while looking around at the same time, the perplexed look on his face growing stronger and stronger. "That's not right. The dragon's vein of the true dragon should be right here, so why is it gone? Could it have been moved away by someone? Or has it already transformed into a true dragon and flown away? Dragon-rearing sovereign was fretful and uneasy. He immediately descended at a rapid speed, going towards the bottom of the huge hole. Qin Mu immediately rose into the sky and jumped onto the dragon Qilan's back. Fatty Dragon flew down while stepping on auspicious clouds. Long Jiaonan also flew up, then descended downward. After some time, they finally came to the bottom of the huge cavern. The two of them trembled as they looked at their surroundings in a daze. They saw lava flowing down on the walls of the cavern, washing down on the brilliant gold underground space. They were in an extremely vast space. Magma poured down from above and pounded against the ground, which was made of metal. The whole surroundings were densely packed with black gold essence, some of it in pillars and some in huge rocks that looked extremely luxurious. Strange writings, runes, and pictures appeared on the black gold, sometimes glowing and sometimes dimming as they flowed continuously. The group could feel extremely terrifying auras around, which were both powerful and cryptic. A dragon's roar, which was brutal and formidable, could be faintly heard as well. Strange. These writings and runes seem slightly familiar. I seem to have seen them somewhere before. Qin Mu was bewildered. He went next to one of the black gold essence pillar and examined it in detail. The writing was indeed familiar. True Dragon Lord is indeed not here. Not here. Dragon-rearing sovereign was already annoyed and was checking on the gold dragon when he suddenly let out a deafening shout. There's only a dragon nest. Who dug away the true Dragon Lord? The true Dragon Lord has been dug away? Qin Mu was stunned. He looked at the huge underground dragon nest. It was very wide, with black gold essence everywhere. However, from the pillar's arrangement, there should have been a huge dragon entrenched there. The center of the dragon nest was empty, presenting a ring-shaped space. Of course, that area was extremely huge, with the circumference of over a dozen miles. The huge dragon's vein didn't seem to have been finished absorbing the dragon chi to become the divine dragon when it got dug out and brought away. The true Dragon Lord had been refined into a dragon jade. Dragon-rearing sovereign walked around the area, his face turning black. He said coldly, "However, that person still miscalculated. He didn't expect for me, dragon-rearing sovereign, to come here, and didn't foresee that he couldn't leave the dragon nest of the true Dragon Lord behind. The person who kept away the dragon's vein of the true Dragon Lord had really refined it into a dragon jade?" Qin Mu cried out in astonishment in his head. Whoever has that great magic power? Dragon jade was a kind of jade pendant that portrayed a coiling dragon. The shape was that of a circle, but there was a gap. From the shape of the dragon nest left behind, the dragon's head and tail weren't connected, which was the shape of a dragon jade. However, the material in the dragon nest was black gold essence, while dragon jade was made of jade. On top of that, the biggest a dragon jade could be was the size of a palm. How could a true Dragon Lord that was over a dozen miles long be refined into a dragon jade that was the size of a palm? Qin Mu soon saw why dragon-rearing sovereign said it was a dragon jade. The god peeled off a layer of black gold essence from one of the black gold pillars, revealing the jade inside. Qin Mu raised his head and examined it in detail. The magma around them contained molten black gold essence, and when it washed over the dragon nest, it covered the jade and gave it the color of gold. The dragon nest that dragon-rearing sovereign had mentioned was made solely of fine jade. The dragon's vein of the true dragon nest should have been nurtured to completion, absorbing the dragon chi coming from great ruins and eternal peace empire. However, someone had found it before it had matured and become a true dragon. They refined it into a dragon jade and brought it away. No wonder then that there was such a huge abyss in that place. The person who had taken away the dragon jade had to have found the dragon's vein of the true Dragon Lord and dug through the ground to find the dragon nest. Dragon-rearing sovereign's body trembled, and fire flood dragons instantly peered out from his clothes. As they shook their bodies, they transformed into huge flood dragons and spewed out intense fire in all directions, smelting all the black gold essence around them. Melted gold flowed all over the dragon nest continuously, which made Qin Mu sigh in pity. After the black gold essence flowed away, more jade mountain rocks were revealed. They reflected the light from the magma, and multicolored lights gradually shone from the crystal-like jade, whose luster was much gentler than that of crystals. The person who took away the true dragon lord must have left the dragon nest to continue absorbing the dragon chi here. When accumulated was large enough, he would come to take the dragon nest and use it to nourish the true dragon lord. This way, both the dragon nest and the true dragon lord could be protected. Dragon-rearing sovereign laughed continuously and looked at the dragon nest below that was gradually showing its shape. He said arrogantly, "However, it's useless. They didn't expect me to be a step faster than them to take away the dragon nest. They took the true dragon lord away to refine it into dragon jade, but I will control the dragon nest to restrain the dragon jade. Once I collect it, I will be able to sense the direction of the dragon jade. Once I find it, the dragon's vein of the true dragon lord will become complete." Qin Mu touched his chest, and the jade pendant on his chest became scalding hot, so much so that he felt uncomfortable. There were 2 jade pendants hanging around his neck. One had been passed down from his ancestors, the jade pendant from Carefree Village, and the other was Emperor's Disc, which Cripple had stuffed into his hands some time ago. Emperor's Disc was currently giving off heat which left Qin Mu somewhat uncomfortable. "Wait a moment." Qin Mu blinked and grabbed his chest. The Emperor's Disc that Cripple had given him seemed to have the shape of a dragon jade. His heart suddenly pounded violently twice. Emperor's Disc was a jade pendant that was carved with numerous cryptic runes, writings, and pictures that were glowing from time to time. Legend said that Emperor's Disc was a treasure gods had conferred to the Ling family, and it represented the authority and role of the emperor. To steal this item, Cripple had even lost his leg to Imperial Preceptor. However, after getting the Emperor's Disc, Cripple had studied it for dozens of years and still couldn't figure anything out. Thus he stopped paying any attention to it. Emperor's Disc was useless to him, so he stuffed it into the youth's hands. Qin Mu had planned to return it to him after coming back to the village, but Cripple didn't want to take it back. He had already reattached his leg, so he lacked any interest toward the Emperor's Disc. Since then, that treasure had always been hanging around Qin Mu's neck, tied together with his own pendant. It can't be such a coincidence, right? Beads of cold sweat formed on Qin Mu's forehead. Emperor's Disc indeed had some runes, writings, and pictures which were similar to the runes, writings, and pictures around the dragon nest. They were also glowing and flowing from time to time, making him unable to understand them. However, this Emperor's Disc of mine isn't a dragon jade. It just looks like one. There is no gap. Maybe the writings and pictures on the Emperor's Disc being similar to the ones in the dragon nest are just due to a coincidence. Qin Mu composed his heart, thinking to see how dragon-rearing sovereign would take away the dragon nest. However, the Emperor's Disc around his neck became more and more scalding. Soon it became unbearable. Suddenly, Qin Mu felt something moving over his chest, and the heart of the youth couldn't help pounding an extra time. He stretched his hand out to touch it. The Emperor's Disc had split open and become a dragon jade. Not only that, Qin Mu could even feel the dragon jade becoming slimy, as though it had become a living thing. It felt like a small dragon. Thump, thump, thump. Qin Mu heard the violent beating of his heart which couldn't be suppressed. Bigger droplets of sweat formed on his forehead and his legs also became slightly numb as he almost couldn't breathe. Dragon-rearing sovereign took a glance at him and asked when he sensed his nervousness, "What wrong with you, little thing?" Qin Mu composed himself and said, "I just remembered that I haven't fed the dragons today and was afraid of Dragon Sovereign's punishment. That's why I'm feeling uneasy." Dragon-rearing sovereign smiled and said, "So I see. However, this place is too hot and there's magma everywhere. There's no place to stand, so if you want to refine pills to feed the dragons, it'd be best if you went back up. Don't be so scared of me. I'm easy to talk to." Qin Mu acknowledged his words, but his legs were still soft. He said, "In that case, disciple shall go up to refine pills." Dragon-rearing sovereign's body trembled, and instantly numerous dragons of all sizes flew out from his clothes. He then passed his Taotai sack to the youth and said, "Let your maid follow you to help. Train her well. Don't let her be so wild all the time." Qin Mu immediately hurried the dragon Qilin into the air, while the group of flood dragons followed behind them to wait for their food. Long Jiaonan also followed up. When he came to the gate of the cavern, Qin Mu said, "Maid, you shall stay here. I will go over there to refine pills." Long Jiaonan sneered and said, "Dragon Sovereign made me follow you as he's scared you will run." "I will run, I will run? Ha ha ha. What a joke." Qin Mu's face was black. Below the cavern, Dragon Rearing Sovereign started to cast a spell, trying to refine the huge dragon nest to take it away. Strange. It seems like the true Dragon Lord is quite close to here. There's a reaction from the dragon nest. Dragon Rearing Sovereign said in astonishment. It seems to not be far away. Strange. Let's just take the dragon nest first. Once I'm done with it, I will know where is the true Dragon Lord. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 369, Revenge in Afterlife. In front of the gate that had the reliefs of 1,000 dragons, numerous flood dragons of all sizes followed closely behind Qin Mu, waiting for him to feed them. Long Jiaonan was also following behind with her gaze flickering. Time and time again, her gaze would fall on the body of a red flood dragon. That time, among the dragons that Dragon Rearing Sovereign had let Qin Mu feed, the red flood dragon from Dragon Rider sect was also present. The red flood dragon of the Dragon King was an entity of the cult master level, and it was very familiar with Long Jiaonan. Even though it was snatched by Dragon Rearing Sovereign, as long as Long Jiaonan blew the jade flute, she could still control it. Qin Mu's eyes were still, but his brain was moving at a lightning-fast speed as he thought of ways to escape. If Dragon Rearing Sovereign took away that huge dragon nest, he and the Emperor's disc might just fly over to squat there obediently upon the nest's activation. How would he then explain the origin of his pendant then? Getting torn apart and eaten by a dragon was an acceptable ending, but what if he didn't die? If he ran away right then, he wouldn't be able to escape all the flood dragons following behind him. Furthermore, Long Jiaonan was also around, so if he tried to run, he would definitely be killed by that woman. Maid, fetch the herbs to refine pills. Qin Mu threw the Taotai sack to Long Jiaonan, his face flickering between dark and clear. Even though he was slightly farther away from the dragon nest, Emperor's disc around his neck was still squirming as though it was going to come to life. There was an indescribable connection between it and the nest. On top of that, the Emperor's disc became more and more scalding, as if it would transform into a dragon to fly back to the nest. Long Jiaonan held back her anger and opened up the Taotai sack to separate the spirit herbs. Qin Mu took out the dragon bead and held it in his hand to absorb its energy. Instantly, a terrifying energy swept through his whole body and flooded his limbs, causing his strength to rise up drastically. No matter what, I will have to leave. Otherwise, after Dragon Rearing Sovereign takes the dragon nest away, I won't have any chance to leave. Qin Mu stretched his hand, and a trail of flowing magma flew up from the river nearby, coming to his side. Since you want me to feed the dragons, I shall feed. Not only shall I feed them, I shall even kidnap them. I can't run away from Dragon Rearing Sovereign by myself, but if I ride on a dragon, who knows? His vital chi transformed into black tortoise vital chi, and the temperature of the magma fell. However, it didn't solidify. Numerous shiny metals dropped down from the trail of magma and clanked on the floor. What had solidified in the magma was the black gold essence. It required a higher temperature to be liquid than magma. Using this method, Qin Mu could extract black gold essence at a quick speed. The purity was also extremely high. Soon, he managed to collect enough black gold essence to forge a golden flute. In the meantime, Long Jiaonan was still separating the spirit herbs. She had yet to finish. Qin Mu placed the golden flute at his mouth and used secrets of dragon control, which was spoken about in dragon rearing scripture. Once he gathered his vital chi to blow the golden flute, a couple of notes left it. It was the first time he cultivated secrets of dragon control, so the melody of the flute was slightly clumsy. However, after testing out the tones for a few times, Qin Mu became more skilled. The flood dragons, which had lower cultivations, flew to and fro according to the sound of his flute, seeming to be enjoying it. Qin Mu walked forward, and a few more flood dragons moved along with his music. Gradually, he could feel the immense consciousness of the 7 flood dragons connecting with his through the melody of the flute. Boom! His mind exploded, and he felt his consciousness and thoughts link together with the consciousness of the 7 flood dragons, which were as vast as the sea. The corner of Long Jiaonan's eyes twitched, and she immediately stopped separating the herbs. With her eyes flickering, she took out her jade flute and also began to play it. She tried to fight for the control of those flood dragons. Maid, seeking death? Qin Mu was furious and suddenly let go of the golden flute. He used his vital qi to play a melody with the flute while he himself sent a punch toward Long Jiaonan. He was completely infuriated. That woman just kept causing trouble for him. If he didn't kill her, it would be hard for him to leave. I've also tolerated you for long enough. Long Jiaonan couldn't help becoming furious when she heard the word maid. She also let go of her jade flute to let her vital qi blow it. She stretched her hand out to face Qin Mu head-on as well. This woman isn't that dumb. She clearly knows that dragon-rearing sovereign gave me an even better dragon bead, yet she still dares to face me head-on. There's definitely something wrong. Qin Mu immediately used the force, and at the instant their 2 palms collided, a red flood dragon came barreling toward Qin Mu. It was none other than the fire flood dragon of Dragon Rider sect. Once dragon-rearing sovereign was trying to take the dragon nest, all his attention was placed on it. This caused the control he had on the dragons he raised to weaken, and Long Jiaonan could instantly connect with the red flood dragon, ordering it to attack. Qin Mu had expected the danger, so he immediately moved backward. A green-colored flood dragon instantly brandished its claws to collide with the red flood dragon. Terrifying waves of air in the dragon's vein blasted out, sending both Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan flying. Qin Mu landed on the scalding magma river. It instantly rumbled, and 2 fire flood dragons rose and carried him over. Long Jiaonan was smacked into a wall by the blast, and the melodious music of her flute immediately controlled another flood dragon. Its fire grew brighter and brighter, blazing in its throat. When it opened its mouth, a beam of surgingly fire shot out, rushing toward Qin Mu like a fire dragon. It was the type of fire which could smelt everything and even vaporize magma. Qin Mu's flute immediately controlled a water flood dragon to pounce on the head of the fire flood dragon. His pet spewed out can water which suppressed the leaf fire, and the 2 flood dragons instantly tangled each other in a fight. Qin Mu put his fingers together to stab forward, and Carefree sword came out of its sheath to pierce through the layers of flames, going for the heart of Long Jiaonan's brows in a flash. Long Jiaonan was astonished, but she didn't have time to dodge, so she just tilted her head to the side. Carefree sword brushed across her face and stabbed into the dragon scales behind her. So close! Before she could even take in a breath, thousands of sword lights passed through the flames. Right at that moment, the red flood dragon suddenly coiled its body around her to protect her. Countless sword lights clanked against the dragon scales as Qin Mu's flying swords were all blocked by the flood dragon of the cult master level. In the dragon's vein, the flood dragons sunk into a panic, and they all gave off deep dragon roars. The reverberation of it almost exploded Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan's eardrums. Qin Mu's vital qi blew toward the golden flute as he tried to take control of more flood dragons. Long Jiaonan also immediately roused her vital qi to fight with him. The flood dragons were controlled by the sounds of their flutes, and their consciousness was connected with them, making them fight one another. The cultivations of the flood dragons were equivalent to experts that were near God level, and every single one of them was matchless. They used few divine arts and mostly clashed with their corporeal bodies. Only then did Qin Mu see how terrifying were the corporeal bodies of the dragon race. When they moved, thousands of muscles were mobilized, and when their tendons stretched tautly and became loose afterward, they gave off loud bangs which were like thunder from a clear sky. This was a strength that could shift mountains and fill seas, and it was within the body of a dragon. Their explosive force surpassed that of the human race countless times. But it wasn't even all. If the flood dragons executed their divine arts and exploded with their real might, they would be even scarier. However, Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan were both self-aware. The The both of them had almost died in the dragon's vein when the two flood dragons had spewed fire and water, so it was best to not let them execute their divine arts and just fight with their corporeal bodies. Even though their cultivations were different, with Long Jianan being on the 7 stars realm which far surpassed Qin Mu on the 6 directions realm, Qin Mu was no inferior to her in terms vital qi density. The number of flood dragons their flutes could control was 3. Any more than that, and their vital qi wouldn't be enough. Their consciousness also wouldn't be able to handle it. Qin Mu had just begun cultivating secrets of dragon control, but it was one that was complete. Long Jianan had cultivated that technique for 30-40 years, but it was from an incomplete copy. Due to that, their power with secrets of dragon control was about identical. However, Long Jianan still possessed an advantage. The red flood dragon of the Dragon King was familiar with her, so it was much easier to control. It was also the fiercest in fights, listening to every word of hers. Qin Mu, on the other hand, had just established his connection with the 3 flood dragons, so he couldn't control them as he wished. That bit of difference determined the outcome of their fight. Long Jianan controlled the red flood dragon to bite on the neck of a yellow flood dragon, smashing it against the stone wall heavily. The limbs of the red flood dragon touched the floor, and he slithered forward, passing through the other flood dragons that were fighting to pounce straight at Qin Mu. Rascal! I want to take revenge for everyone in Dragon Rider sect, Long Jianan shouted furiously. Qin Mu's eyes lighted up, and he moved backward quickly. He suddenly transformed into a shadow that stuck to the wall and moved along the wall of the dragon's vein, avoiding the red flood dragon by going over its head. Sister Long, I'm sorry. His voice came from the wall as he rapidly closed in on her. Astonished, Long Jianan saw a huge shadow appear behind her. The dragon Qilin had long been waiting for the moment the red flood dragon would leave her side. When his mouth opened, blazing true fire spewed out. Long Jianan hurriedly turned herself around and grabbed the dragon bead to welcome the Qilin fire. When the two touched, the bead burst forth with multicolored lights and blocked the Qilin fire. The abilities of the dragon Qilin were comparable to an expert of celestial being realm, and his Qilin fire was incomparably fierce, charring the hand which Long Jianan used to hold the dragon bead. However, Long Jianan herself was safe and sound. At that moment, the shadow in which Qin Mu had transformed descended from above and materialized as he punched the back of Long Jianan's heart. Boom! Long Jianan was blown away and crashed into the wall of the dragon's vein, all the bones in her body shattering. If there's afterlife, find me for revenge. Qin Mu flicked his finger, and carefree sword stabbed the heart of Long Jianan's brows. She'd been sliding down from the wall, but the sword nailed her still. Swoosh! 8,000 swords arrived all together and filled the stone wall. Qin Mu's sword finger pointed back, and Carefree's sword returned back into the sheath. The other swords also returned into his Taotai sack, but Long Jianan could no longer be found on the stone wall. Only a pile of minced meat was left behind. She couldn't shed her skin to rebirth anymore. Qin Mu's vital qi played the sound of the flute, and a fire flood dragon rushed over. Qin Mu leaped on its back and shouted, "Fatty dragon!" The dragon Qilin immediately jumped onto the back of the dragon and wagged his tail to fawn at him. Only then did Qin Mu saw him carrying Dragon Rearing Sovereign's Taotai sack in his mouth. Well done! Qin Mu gave a rare praise which made the dragon Qilin's heart bloom with joy. The sound of the flute became hurried, and the fire flood dragon immediately turned direction, running back the way from which they had come. With the speed of this fire flood dragon, if it continues running at full speed, it can probably run out of great ruins in less than a day and reach Eternal Peace Empire. Qin Mu was excited, but when he turned his head back, his face turned black. Even though the fire flood dragon ran very fast, the other flood dragons followed behind him like shadows. Some were flying, some were running, and some were even swimming. All of them raised their heads to look at him, waiting for him to feed them. "I've only fed you guys once. Don't keep following me," Qin Mu pleaded them. "I beg you. You guys are free. Go wherever you want to go. Don't follow me." The flood dragons of various colors still continued to follow him with their heads raised up to look at him, waiting for him to feed them. All of your conducts are like those of fatty dragon. Qin Mu was speechless from anger. He could only take the Taotai sack of dragon-rearing sovereign and refine pills to feed those bum beetles. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 370. Abandon the mountain and run for your lives. Refining pills for the flood dragons was a walk in the park for Qin Mu. The spirit pills that each type of flood dragon ate were different, and he had to refine numerous types of them. However, Qin Mu still managed to refine enough spirit pills to feed those bum beetles until they were full. He had thought that the flood dragons would disperse after they were full, but they actually continued to follow him. His intention had been to just control one dragon to get out while letting the others run around. In this way, dragon-rearing sovereign might chase after his brood, which could delay him for a short period of time. However, the flood dragons already recognized Qin Mu as their meal person, so they were reluctant to part with him. He was driven mad but helpless at the same time. Dragon-rearing sovereign only recorded how to subdue dragons and not how to chase them away. Qin Mu blinked and could only submit to his fate. The fire flood dragon under his feet followed the underground dragon vein while sprinting at full speed. It was twice, maybe even 3 times faster when compared to when they were coming there. Couldn't be denied that a dragon was a strong life form even if it was just flood dragon. Their corporeal bodies were much stronger than those of humans, and their endurance was even more astounding. After running for 20-30,000 miles, there was still no decrease in their speed. Dragons are really strong. Of course, other than Fatty Dragon, that glutton is a disgrace to dragons. Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration. Chancellor Ba Shan's green bull also had the bloodline of the green dragon, and his endurance was also terrifyingly strong. He had once carried him and Ling Yuxiu out of Roland's golden palace to the capital, and that was truly an astonishing endurance. Qin Mu took another glance at the round dragon Qilin beside him and was absolutely sure that he was a disgrace to dragons. The dragon Qilin would start to pant heavily after running with all his strength for 200-300 miles. Running leisurely for 5,000 miles would completely exhaust him, which would result in him lying down on the ground to snore heavily like a dead pig. According to this speed, I will be able to return to eternal peace in a short while. Qin Mu was full of confidence. If he returned to Eternal Peace Empire, he could either go to the capital to activate Sunshot Divine Cannon or find Blind, Butcher, Village Chief, and the rest. At that time, there would be no need for him to be afraid of Dragon-rearing Sovereign. At that moment, Dragon-rearing Sovereign's voice blasted beside his ear. Little thing, where are you rushing with my kidnapped dragons? Qin Mu's hair stood up on ends, and his sweat flowed down like a waterfall. He hurriedly turned back to look, but he didn't see Dragon-rearing Sovereign. He's transmitting his voice. Goosebumps formed on Qin Mu's body. Could Dragon-rearing Sovereign had already taken the dragon nest away? How could he take such a huge dragon nest so quickly? Moving such a huge thing isn't difficult for a god, but it is difficult to refine it into becoming so small that it can be put away easily. Qin Mu's scalp crawled. To refine the dragon nest into the size of a jade pendant in a short time required incomparably dense cultivation. To a divine arts practitioners of 6 directions realm like him, this was something that was completely impossible to even imagine. Dragon-rearing Sovereign was no doubt a god of high heavens. To take away the dragon nest in such a short time required the densest magic power Qin Mu had ever encountered. He must have only taken the dragon nest when he discovered that I ran away with the dragons, so that's why he transmitted his voice. It isn't because he's already behind me, so I still have the possibility to reach eternal peace. Qin Mu composed himself. The speed of the fire flood dragon under his feet had already started to slow down. The beast had already sprinted for 20-30,000 miles, so even if its speed had slightly slowed, it was still extremely astonishing and its endurance could be said to be long-lasting. Qin Mu immediately made a decision, and the sound of his flute changed. He had another flood dragon come close and jumped on it. The dragon Qilin also jumped over on the other dragon's back. The golden dragon immediately exerted its strength to sprint faster, and their speed was boosted once again. He, little thing. Dragon-rearing Sovereign's voice continued to travel over. He was using magic power to have his words reach an extremely far-off place. Qin Mu had once seen this kind of great divine art used by Chancellor Ba Shan. However, Chancellor Ba Shan had transmitted his voice from 1,000 miles away, while dragon-rearing sovereign could probably transmit it even farther than 20-30,000 miles. Qin Mu could feel his voice coming over at an extremely fast speed. It was obvious that dragon-rearing sovereign was transmitting it while running. Between his sentences, he had already gotten 1,000 miles closer. I don't blame you for kidnapping my dragons, so I'll still treat you well and continue to let you be my dragon-raising boy. You should know that I admire you very much. That's why I like your talent. Wait a minute. Weird. Dragon-rearing sovereign's voice had a hint of astonishment as he cried out, I can sense through the dragon nest the true dragon lord moving rapidly. The emperor's disc on Qin Mu's chest became warm, and the dragon jade started to stretch out and squirm continuously. It seemed to be able to sense the dragon nest as well. Hee little thing. The true dragon lord is running in the same direction as you, so no wonder you would run away. The true dragon lord is on your body. His voice was both delighted and furious. So the true dragon lord was always right under my nose. How daring of you, to bounce around under my nose for so long. If you were able to escape, wouldn't my reputation as dragon-rearing sovereign be ruined by you? Where was I bouncing around? I was clearly very honestly by your side. Qin Mu said resentfully. Suddenly, a strange whistle could be heard. It was sharp, piercing through the space from 20,000 miles away. The dragons of all sizes that were sprinting with Qin Mu paused in their footsteps, slightly hesitant. The gold flood dragon under Qin Mu's feet also slowed down. It turned its body, thinking to run back in the direction of the whistle. Qin Mu immediately executed the golden flute and used it to control the golden dragon, but it wasn't moving at all. Qin Mu gritted his teeth and jumped off the dragon's back. He landed on the dragon Qilin and shouted, Fatty dragon, go! The dragon Qilin immediately rushed forward, and the whistle suddenly changed. The dragon Qilin also paused in his footsteps. The other flood dragons surrounded them, and it was obvious that dragon-rearing sovereign had used his whistle to control them. Even the dragon Qilin was ordered around and ready to attack Qin Mu. The flood dragons surrounded him so tightly that even a drop of water couldn't trickle through. They all raised their heads to look at him, but they didn't make a move. Suddenly, a flood dragon stretched out its long tongue to lick Qin Mu's stiff body, his palm to be exact. The whistling suddenly became fiercer, and from the sound of it, Qin Mu could well imagine that dragon-rearing sovereign was definitely furious. He was executing secrets of dragon control to urge the flood dragon to beat up Qin Mu. However, none of the flood dragons lay their claws on him. The whistle from dragon-rearing sovereign became even more urgent, but the flood dragons still didn't listen to its orders. Cold sweat rolled down Qin Mu's forehead, and he tried to move his shoulder. The dozen flood dragons surrounding him lowered their heads, and their dragon whiskers swayed around slightly. Ma Zhu Sha. Strange dragon roars came from the mouths of the flood dragons as they became docile and obedient. Qin Mu was slightly stunned and lowered his head to take a look. He saw that the emperor's disc had popped out from under his clothes, and it looked like an extremely fine dragon who had popped its head out and was leaning on his collar. Emperor's disc, the true dragon lord. Qin Mu came to an enlightenment. Dragon-rearing sovereign's cultivation surpassed his by far, and his attainments in secrets of dragon control were also much higher. However, it had to be the effect of the emperor's disc that the flood dragons didn't go under dragon-rearing sovereign's control. Qin Mu jumped onto the back of a flood dragon and shouted, Collapse this dragon's vein for me. Dragon roars sounded out as over a dozen dragons trembled their bodies. They expanded drastically as they all revealed their true forms. In an instant, all kinds of savage and wild auras burst forth. Over a dozen flood dragons opened their mouths, and an incomparably terrifying throbbing sound exploded. Instantly, there was a world-shaking boom, and the dragon scales and stone walls of the dragon vein were destroyed. Crumbling walls collapsed, and the debris blocked off the entire passageway. The lava would then continue to rise higher and higher until it totally flooded the dragon's vein. Soon, the magma would completely fill up the passageway. Qin Mu shouted a command, and the group of flood dragons immediately went with him to rush out at a lightning-fast speed. Behind them, lava continued to pour down. The middle section of the dragon's vein had been ruined, so it would soon crumble in its entirety. In time, Qin Mu managed to rush out of the passageway and entered another dragon's vein before the previous one had completely crumbled. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. The ruined dragon's vein can block dragon rearing sovereign off for a period of time, but not for long. He hurried the group of dragons to move forward through the dragon's vein, heading them toward Eternal Peace Empire through the underground. In Great White Mountain, numerous disciples of Great White Sword Sect guarded the volcano closely. They had even brought the sect legacy treasure, which was 100 cases sword formation. There was 100 sword cases, each one 20 yards in length, surrounding the entrance of the volcano. 100 cases sword formation had quite a high reputation among the sword technique school. It was a precious treasure that the founding master of Great White Sword Sect had left behind. Ever since the sect had been founded, the 100 sword cases were smelted every day in the volcano. Thus their power grew stronger and stronger. They were like 100 huge and black stone tablets that were standing upright. The sword formation was ready to burst forth at any moment. On the mountaintop, snow fell continuously. Even though the place was a volcano, it was still very cold. Only the places near the mouth were warmer. A few disciples of the sword sect rubbed their hands to feel warm while they breathed out white vapors from their nostrils. A female disciple asked, "How does Heavenly Devil Cult Master, that old devil, knows that there's an unusual treasure in the mountains of our Great White Sword Sect? We lived here so long, and we still didn't even discover anything. Yet that old devil knew the moment he arrived." "How would I know?" The male disciple beside her leaned on a huge sword case to avoid the cold wind and shook his head. "However, the people of Heavenly Devil Cult are all very crafty. So they must have found about the treasure in our Great White Sword Sect and thus came to take it. But they are underestimating our Great White Sword Sect too much, not even greeting us at all, truly arrogant." An elder of the sword sect said, "Isn't the devil path always like that? What kind of person is this current Heavenly Devil Cult Master? He brought the emperor and imperial preceptor to the temple by killing his way through, then slew the crown prince in the emperor's face. So what else would he not dare to do? However, since sect leader has gone to the capital to submit an imperial appeal, we will definitely win. The treasure will belong to our Great White Sword Sect. But now that sect leader isn't around, we need to buckle up and guard this place to prevent that old devil from bringing the treasure out and escaping." The numerous disciples that were stationed at the entrance of the volcano laughed. "Even though the treasure is below, there will definitely be numerous dangers. That old devil risks his life to find the treasure, not expecting that whatever he'll find will have to be handed over to us, the Great White Sword Sect." Just as they were saying that, the volcano suddenly rumbled, and the elder of the sect immediately shouted loudly, "All disciples, the old devil is coming out. Execute 100 cases sword formation to trap that old devi." Roar. Dragon roars came from the volcano, which suddenly erupted. Lava spurted out from its mouth and shot straight into the sky. Before everyone in Great White Sword Sect could execute the sword formation, they saw the entire peak exploding from the impact. The sword cases, which were like black stone tablets, flew out in all directions. Everyone was dumbstruck, not knowing what to do. They could only watch the lava spewing out from the volcano as Qin Mu brought out a dozen flood dragons. "Disciples of Great White Sword Sect, quickly abandon the mountain and run for your lives." Qin Mu's voice came from above. "The big one is coming." "What big one?" Everyone in the sword sect was furious. An even more violent tremor came from the depths of the volcano, and Great White Mountain gave off loud splitting sounds as huge cracks spread through its body. Lava started to pour out from the cracks.